The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence at 11:45 p.m. Xiomara van der Vinny had been running through her katas in the backyard dojo, barefoot on the wooden platform, when she heard the unmistakable crack of her living room window splintering. Her brown hair, tied back in a practical knot, was still damp with sweat. She wore a denim blue button-down shirt tucked into wide-legged martial arts trousers that allowed her legs to move like water. Her hand moved on instinct. The katana hanging on the dojo wall slid free from its sheath with a whisper of steel. No one came to this house. Not anymore. Not since the pack hunters had started circling 3 months ago. Xiomara had chosen this modest suburban cottage specifically because it sat at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by trees, invisible to the wolf politics that ruled the city. She moved through the back door into her kitchen, silent as a shadow. The lights were off, but she didn't need them. Her wolf senses picked up everything. 2 heartbeats. Both male. Both radiating the kind of power that made the air feel thick. One of them wasn't just a wolf. He was an alpha. Xiomara's grip tightened on the katana's handle as she stepped into the living room doorway. The streetlight outside cast long shadows through the broken window. 2 men stood in the center of her space, completely uninvited, as if they owned it. The one on the left crouched low, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, dark hair falling over eyes that glowed faintly amber. His posture screamed enforcer, ready to strike the second his alpha gave the word. But it was the man standing in the center of the room who made Xiomara's wolf stir with recognition and warning. Tall. Commanding. He wore a long dark wool coat that fell past his knees, unbuttoned over a charcoal button-down shirt and perfectly tailored trousers. His beard was full and precisely trimmed, his brown hair styled even at this ungodly hour. Everything about him radiated authority. From the way he stood to the finger, he now pointed directly at her. Rainer Vrins. The alpha of the Vrins pack. The most powerful bloodline in the city. And he was standing in her living room like he had every right to be there. Xiomara van der Vinny. His voice was low, rough, more accustomed to command than conversation. She raised the katana, angling the blade between them. The edge caught the light. You have 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't cut you in half for breaking into my home. He didn't flinch. Didn't even glance at the sword. His dark eyes stayed locked on hers, and in them she saw something that made her hesitate. Desperation. Raw. Undisguised. Barely controlled. I'm not here to fight you, Rainer said, taking one deliberate step closer. I'm here because I have a problem. And you're the only solution I have left. Xiomara didn't lower the blade. I don't solve problems for alphas. Get out. I need a wife. The words came out flat, factual. By tomorrow morning. She blinked. For the first time in years, someone had managed to surprise her. What did you just say? I need a mate. There are 17 hours left. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up so she could see a formal legal document. The mate clause in pack law. If an alpha is challenged for leadership and doesn't have a bonded mate, the challenge can't be refused. My cousin Sylvian Burkhoff filed the paperwork 3 days ago. The Blood Moon Gala is tomorrow night. If I show up without a wife, he gets to fight me for the pack. And he stacked the deck to make sure I lose. Xiomara's eyes narrowed. And what does any of this have to do with me? Rainer's jaw tightened. Sylvian is the one who sent the hunters after you. The world stopped. Her katana trembled, just slightly, in her hands. You're lying. I'm not. He took another step forward, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his face. The sleepless nights. The weight of something far heavier than a crown. Sylvian's been tracking rogue wolves for months. Trying to find leverage. Trying to find threats. You're at the top of his list because you're good enough to be dangerous. If he takes control of the pack, you won't last a week. Why should I believe you? Xiomara's voice came out harder than she intended. You're an alpha. Your family's been hunting rogues for generations. Because I don't lie. Ever. Rainer Vrins stood in the wreckage of her broken window, looking like a king who'd come to beg. And because you don't have another option. Neither do I. Xiomara stared at him. A powerful alpha, standing in her living room in the dead of night, asking her to be his wife. Part of her wanted to drive the blade through his chest and be done with it. But something in the way he looked at her, like she was his last hope, made her pause. And maybe, just maybe, he was hers too. If I agree, she said slowly, not lowering the sword. And I'm not saying I will. But if I agree, I have one condition. His eyes sharpened. Name it. You don't take me to your penthouse. You don't parade me around like a trophy. You don't drag me into your world of pack politics and power games. She angled the tip of the katana directly at his chest. You come live here. In my house. You follow my rules. You sleep on my couch. You eat the food I cook. You train in my dojo. And you prove to me that you're not just another alpha who thinks a wife is something you acquire. Rainer Vrins went completely still. The man in tactical gear behind him shifted, eyes wide with shock. For a long moment, the alpha said nothing. His dark eyes searched her face as if seeing something he'd never encountered before. Then he nodded. Agreed. I'll live here. I'll follow your rules. He stepped forward, closing the distance until he was close enough to reach out. He extended his hand large, scarred across the knuckles, rough in places that spoke of real work, not just inherited power. So will you help me? Will you marry me tomorrow morning? Xiomara looked at his hand, then at his face. This was insane. Completely insane. Marrying an alpha to escape hunters. Trading one threat for another. But something deep in her gut whispered that this man was different. That behind those exhausted, desperate eyes was someone searching for something he couldn't name. Just like her. She lowered the katana. Let it rest at her side. Then she took his hand. I'm Xiomara van der Vinny. And yes, I'll marry you tomorrow morning. Her grip was iron. Unyielding. But if you betray me, if you use me as a pawn and throw me away when you're done, I will kill you. Don't think for a second that I won't. For the first time, something flickered across Rainer's face. Not quite a smile. But no longer ice-cold either. I believe you, he said quietly. Relief crashed over his features so intensely that Xiomara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She released his hand and gestured to the couch. Sit down. We need to talk details. And your beta. She glanced at the man in black, still crouched and ready, needs to stop looking at me like I'm about to murder you. I haven't decided yet. The beta's eyes widened, but Rainer raised a hand. Stand down, Mikey. Slowly, reluctantly, the enforcer straightened. Rainer Vrins, the alpha of the most powerful pack in the city, sat down on Xiomara van der Vinny's worn couch. And neither of them knew that the choice they made tonight would change both their lives forever. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I would love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. Xiomara's modest living room had never held this much raw power in one place. Rainer sat stiffly on the edge of her couch, his expensive coat draped over the armrest, looking completely out of place against the simple furniture and warm wooden floors. Xiomara set 2 glasses of water on the coffee table. She didn't keep alcohol in the house, a discipline thing, and sat across from him in the reading chair, keeping enough distance that she could reach her sword if needed. She didn't trust anyone, especially not alphas who appeared at midnight with impossible demands. Rainer's eyes swept the room, pausing on the framed photographs on the mantel. A woman with kind eyes and the same brown hair as Xiomara. A man with calloused hands and a warm smile. Both gone now. Tell me, Xiomara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Everything. From the beginning. And Rainer told her. About his father, the previous alpha, who had died 6 months ago. About the power vacuum. About Sylvian Burkhoff, his cousin, who'd been circling like a vulture ever since, looking for any weakness to exploit. About the mate clause, an ancient law designed to ensure pack stability, that Sylvian had weaponized. About the hunters, the conspiracy, the trap being set at tomorrow's Blood Moon Gala. Xiomara listened without interrupting. She watched his face, searching for lies in every word. She couldn't find any. Either Rainer Vrins was telling the truth, or he was the best actor she'd ever met. A car door slammed outside. Rainer glanced toward the broken window. My lawyer. I my drink. He's bringing the contract. Xiomara didn't answer. She simply stood and opened the front door. A man in his early 40s stepped inside, carrying a leather briefcase. Sharp eyes, perfectly pressed suit despite the hour, an air of someone who'd seen enough pack politics to be unshakable. He looked at Xiomara, at the katana still in her hand, and raised an eyebrow. But he asked nothing, just nodded in greeting and set the briefcase on the coffee table. Miss van der Vinnie, I said as he opened it and removed a thick stack of papers. This is the mating contract. I've drafted it per Mr. Vrins' instructions. Every clause is legally binding under both human and pack law. Xiomara took the papers. She read slowly, line by line, word by word. Rainer watched her, something like respect flickering in his eyes when she didn't rush to sign. The contract was clear. Marriage by agreement for a term of 1 year. After 1 year, if they chose to separate, she would receive protection from the pack and autonomy to live where she pleased. All threats against her would be eliminated. Rainer would reside at her home as requested. I want to add a clause, Xiomara said, setting the papers down and meeting Rainer's eyes. You never touch me without my explicit consent. Never. Not even if we're husband and wife on paper. Rainer didn't hesitate. Agreed. I added the clause, then showed it to both of them. Anything else? Rainer asked. Xiomara thought for a moment. If you betray me, if you use me and discard me, I want the right to leave immediately with no questions asked. And you don't come looking for me. Add it, Rainer told I. The lawyer wrote it in. When every clause was complete, I handed the pen to Rainer. He signed bold, decisive handwriting that spoke of a man who'd made 1,000 hard decisions. Then the pen came to Xiomara. She took it, looked down at the paper. Her hand trembled. This was the moment she couldn't undo. Once she signed, she would become the wife of an alpha. Her life would never be the same. But if she didn't sign, the hunters would come. And this time, they wouldn't stop. Xiomara pressed the pen to paper and signed. Xiomara van der Vinnie. Her small, precise signature beside his bold one. Done, I said, gathering the papers. I'll make the arrangements. The ceremony can take place at dawn. 6 a.m. at the courthouse. Xiomara looked out the broken window. The sky was still pitch black. In just a few hours, she would become Mrs. Vrins. And the game would truly begin. The contract sat between them on the coffee table like a loaded weapon. Xiomara read through it a third time, her finger tracing each line of legal text while Rainer watched from across the room. Mikey had positioned himself by the broken window, arms crossed, eyes tracking every movement she made. The beta didn't trust her. Good. The feeling was mutual. The mate clause, Xiomara said finally, looking up at Rainer. Explain it to me again. All of it. Rainer leaned forward, elbows on his knees. In the dim lamplight, the exhaustion on his face was even more pronounced. Pack law is old. Older than this city, older than most of the families that claim territory here. The mate clause was written when alphas were constantly being challenged, when leadership changed hands every few years through bloodshed. It was meant to create stability. How? An alpha with a bonded mate can refuse a challenge for leadership. The theory is that a mated alpha has something to lose beyond power, family, legacy, the future of the bloodline. It makes them more invested in the pack's long-term survival, not just their own dominance. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the careful styling. But an unmated alpha can be challenged by any pack member with enough support. And the challenge can't be refused. Xiomara set the contract down. So Sylvian waited until you were vulnerable. My father died 6 months ago. I took over leadership immediately. I'm the eldest son. It was uncontested. But I wasn't mated. My father had been pushing me to find someone for years, but He trailed off, jaw tight. I was focused on other things. Building alliances, securing territory, managing the business interests. I thought I had time. And Sylvian saw an opening. Sylvian's been waiting for this his entire life. Raynor's voice went cold. He's my cousin, my father's brother's son. He grew up believing he should have been alpha instead of me. He's spent years building his own faction within the pack, wolves who are loyal to him instead of the bloodline. 3 days ago, he filed a formal challenge under the mate clause. Tomorrow night at the Blood Moon Gala, if I show up without a mate, I have to accept his challenge. And if you fight him, he'll kill me. Not in a fair fight. Sylvian doesn't do fair. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. He'll have hunters positioned, silver weapons, contingencies I haven't even thought of yet. Raynor's hands clenched into fists. And even if I somehow survive, he'll tear the pack apart. He's already promised to purge anyone loyal to my father's legacy. Good wolves. Families who've served the Vryn's line for generations. They'll all be exiled or worse. Xiomara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. Her reflection stared back at her, brown hair tied back, denim shirt wrinkled from training, katana still gripped loosely in her left hand. She looked like what she was, a fighter who'd been running for too long. You said Sylvian sent the hunters after me, she said quietly. How do you know that? I have wolves still loyal to me inside Sylvian's faction. One of them reported back 2 weeks ago. Sylvian's been tracking rogues, looking for leverage, looking for threats he can eliminate once he takes power. Your name came up. Raynor stood as well, moving to stand a few feet behind her. You've been careful, but not invisible. The pack knows there's a rogue living in the suburbs who's taken down 3 of Sylvian's enforcers in the past 6 months. They don't know your name, but they know you exist. And Sylvian doesn't like loose ends. 3 enforcers, Xiomara murmured. They came to my dojo. Thought I was easy prey because I'm unmated and living alone. You're not easy prey. She turned to face him. No, I'm not. But I'm also not stupid enough to think I can fight off an entire pack by myself. If Sylvian takes power, he'll send 20 wolves instead of 3. And eventually, I'll lose. So we help each other. Raynor held her gaze. I need a mate to block the challenge. You need protection from the wolves hunting you. It's a simple exchange. Nothing about this is simple. Xiomara moved back to the couch and sat down, finally setting the katana on the coffee table between them. You want me to walk into pack politics, to stand beside you at the Blood Moon Gala and pretend to be your devoted mate. You want me to put a target on my back even bigger than the one I already have. I'll protect you. You can't even protect yourself right now. The words landed like a slap. Raynor's jaw tightened, and for a moment she saw the alpha underneath the desperation, the predator who'd ruled the most powerful pack in the city for 6 months. His eyes flashed amber, wolf rising to the surface. But then he exhaled slowly, deliberately, and the amber faded. You're right. I can't. Not alone. That's why I'm here. Xiomara studied him. Really looked at him for the first time since he'd broken into her home. The expensive clothes couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, the weight he carried. This wasn't a man drunk on power. This was someone fighting to save something bigger than himself. Why me? She asked. You're an alpha. You could have any unmated wolf in the city. Someone from a good bloodline, someone with pack connections, someone who'd actually want to be your mate. Why break into the home of a rogue you've never even met? Raynor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because everyone else would have expectations. They'd want the penthouse, the status, the power that comes with being the alpha's mate. They'd want to change me, to mold me into whatever version of an alpha they dreamed about. And I don't have time for that. I need someone who doesn't want anything from me except to be left alone. Someone strong enough to stand beside me for one night and make Sylvian think twice about his challenge. Someone who won't fall apart when things get dangerous. He met her eyes. My source inside Sylvian's faction told me about you. About the enforcers you took down, about the way you disappeared after each fight like smoke. About the rogue who lives by herself and doesn't bow to anyone. I need that strength, Xiomara. Even if it's only borrowed for a day. Xiomara felt something shift in her chest. Not trust, she was too smart for that. But recognition. She saw herself reflected in him, someone fighting to survive against impossible odds, someone who'd been backed into a corner with no good options left. If I do this, she said slowly, we do it my way. I'm not going to your penthouse. I'm not playing the submissive mate who stands 3 steps behind you and keeps her mouth shut. I'm not becoming another piece of furniture in your world. I wouldn't ask you to. Good. She picked up the katana again, balanced it across her knees. Because here's my condition, Alpha. You want me to be your mate? Then you come live in my world. This house. This neighborhood. This life I've built away from pack politics. You sleep on my couch, you eat the food I cook, you follow my rules. And maybe, you'll prove to me that you're different from every other alpha who thinks power is the only thing that matters. Raynor stared at her. Behind him, Mikey made a sound that might have been a choked laugh or a cough. The beta clearly thought she'd lost her mind. You want me to live here, Raynor said flatly. In a suburban cottage. Away from my pack, my resources, my territory. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. For how long? Until the threat is over. Until Sylvian is dealt with and I'm safe from the hunters. Could be a week. Could be a month. Could be longer. Xiomara stood, using the katana to push herself up, and walked toward him until they were less than an arm's length apart. I need to know what kind of man you are, Raynor Vrins. Money and power can buy a lot of things, but they can't buy character. If I'm going to tie my name to an alpha, if I'm going to stand beside you and face down your enemies, I need to know you're not a monster wearing a nice coat. The air between them crackled with tension. She could feel his wolf, could sense the predator underneath the civilized exterior. Every instinct told her this was dangerous, that letting an alpha this close was a mistake. But she didn't step back. Raynor's eyes searched her face, and she saw the moment he made his decision. The moment he accepted that this strange, infuriating rogue might be his only chance at survival. Agreed, he said quietly. I'll live here. I'll follow your rules. I'll prove to you that I'm not what you expect. He extended his hand. Xiomara looked at it for a long moment, the scarred knuckles, the rough calluses that spoke of someone who'd done real work despite the wealth and privilege. Then she shifted the katana to her left hand and reached out with her right. Their palms met. His hand was warm, solid, and when his fingers closed around hers, she felt the barely controlled strength underneath. 1 year, she said. That's what the contract says. We stay married for 1 year, deal with the threats, and then we're done. No strings, no expectations beyond that. 1 year, Raynor agreed. And if you betray me, if you use me and throw me away when you're done, I will kill you. She tightened her grip. Don't think for a second that I won't. Something flickered in his eyes, not fear, but something close to admiration. I believe you. They held the handshake for another beat, both of them testing the other's resolve, before Xiomara pulled away. Good. She turned to Erai, who'd been watching the entire exchange with the detached interest of a lawyer who'd seen everything. Where do I sign? Erai produced a pen. 3 places. Here, here, and here. Xiomara signed without hesitation. Her handwriting was small, precise, controlled, nothing like Raynor's bold scrawl. When it was done, Erai gathered the papers and slid them back into his briefcase. I'll file these tonight. The ceremony is at 6 a.m. at the courthouse. Judge Morrison owes the Vrins family several favors, so he'll make it official. From a legal standpoint, you'll be married by 6:30. And from a pack standpoint? Xiomara asked. The bond doesn't have to be consummated to count under pack law, Raynor said. Just formalized and witnessed. Once we're legally married, I can present you at the Blood Moon Gala tomorrow night as my mate. That blocks Sylvian's challenge. Just like that. Just like that. Xiomara nodded slowly, trying to process the fact that in less than 12 hours, she would be married to an alpha she'd met 20 minutes ago. All right, then I suggest you both leave and let me get some sleep. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very long day. Raynor hesitated. About the broken window. I'll cover it with plywood tonight. You can pay for a replacement tomorrow. She walked to the front door and opened it. Go. I need time to think about what I just agreed to before I change my mind. Mikey immediately moved toward the door, clearly relieved to be leaving. But Raynor stayed where he was, studying her one more time. Thank you, he said quietly. I know you don't trust me. I know you have every reason not to. But thank you for taking the chance. Xiomara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Raynor turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. The hunters Sylvian sent after you, when did they last come? 4 days ago. 2 of them, watching my dojo from across the street. They left when they realized I'd spotted them. They'll come back. Especially once word gets out about the marriage. Sylvian will see it as a declaration of war. Let them come. Xiomara's hand tightened on the door. I'll be ready. Raynor looked like he wanted to say something else, but Mikey was already heading toward the black SUV parked at the curb. Eri followed, briefcase in hand. 6 a.m., Raynor said. I'll pick you up at 5:30. I'll be ready. He held her gaze for one more moment, then turned and walked away. Xiomara watched the 2 vehicles pull away from her house, their taillights disappearing into the night. Then she closed the door, locked it, and leaned against the wood. What had she just done? She'd agreed to marry an alpha. To walk into the heart of pack politics, the very thing she'd spent years running from. To stand beside a man she didn't know and face down enemies who wanted them both dead. She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. That was something, at least. The katana rested against the wall where she'd left it. She picked it up, felt its familiar weight, and carried it to her bedroom. Sleep would be impossible now, but she could at least try to rest. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would become Xiomara Vrins. And the game would truly begin. The sun was barely up when Xiomara heard the vehicles pull into her driveway. She'd spent the past 4 hours in a state of restless half-sleep, alternating between staring at the ceiling and running through sword forms in her mind. At 5 a.m., she'd finally given up and showered, then dressed in the only clothes she owned that seemed remotely appropriate for a wedding, a simple white blouse and dark gray slacks. Her hair was still damp, pulled back into the same practical knot she always wore. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. In a few hours, she'd be married. The knock on the door came at exactly 5:30. Xiomara opened it to find Raynor standing on her porch, looking somehow even more exhausted than he had 6 hours ago. He'd changed clothes, now wearing a crisp black suit with a dark tie, but the shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept at all. Morning, he said. Morning. They stood there for an awkward moment, 2 strangers about to bind their lives together, neither quite sure what to say. Mikey appeared behind Raynor, carrying 2 takeout cups of coffee. He handed one to Xiomara without a word. She took it, surprised by the small gesture of consideration. Thank you. Mikey just nodded, his expression still wary, but slightly less hostile than before. Ready? Raynor asked. Xiomara grabbed her worn leather jacket from the hook by the door. As I'll ever be. The drive to the courthouse was silent. Xiomara sat in the back of the SUV, watching the city wake up through tinted windows. Streetlights flickered off as dawn broke across the skyline. Early morning joggers passed by. A woman walked her dog. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a rogue wolf was on her way to marry an alpha to prevent a pack war. The courthouse was a utilitarian concrete building downtown, already busy despite the early hour. Raynor led them through a side entrance, bypassing the security checkpoint with a nod to a guard who clearly recognized him. Money and power opened doors literally in this case. Judge Morrison's chambers were on the 3rd floor. The judge himself was a man in his mid-60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when they entered, taking in Xiomara with a quick, assessing glance before returning his attention to Rainer. "Mr. Vrins, I received the paperwork from your attorney at 2 a.m. His tone was dry. "I assume there's some urgency to this arrangement?" "There is, Your Honor. Thank you for accommodating us." Morrison turned to Xiomara. "And you're Xiomara van der Vinny?" "Yes. You understand that this is a legally binding marriage contract? That once I perform the ceremony, you and Mr. Vrins will be husband and wife under the law." "I understand. And you're entering into this of your own free will? No coercion, no pressure." Xiomara almost laughed. There was plenty of pressure, just not the kind the judge was asking about. "Yes, my own free will." Morrison studied her for another moment, then nodded. "Very well. Let's proceed." The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. Morrison read from a standard script, the words blurring together in Xiomara's mind. "Do you take this man? Do you take this woman? In sickness and in health. For richer or poorer?" The promises felt hollow, meaningless when both of them knew this was just a transaction. "Do you have rings?" Morrison asked. Xiomara started to say no, but Rainer reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal 2 simple gold bands, nothing flashy, nothing ornate. Just plain metal that caught the fluorescent light. "I had them made last night," Rainer said quietly, meeting her eyes. "I thought, we should do this properly, even if it's not real." Xiomara didn't know what to say to that. She watched as he slid the smaller ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, somehow, and then she took the larger band and slid it onto his. The metal was warm from being in his pocket. "By the power vested in me by the state," Morrison said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Rainer looked at her, a question in his eyes. Xiomara gave the smallest nod. He leaned in and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to her lips. Just a formality. Nothing more. But when he pulled back, she saw something flicker in his expression, surprise, maybe, or confusion. As if he'd felt the same strange jolt of electricity she had. "Congratulations," Morrison said, signing the marriage certificate with a flourish. "You're now legally married." And just like that, Xiomara van der Vinny became Xiomara Vrins. They were walking back to the SUV when Xiomara saw him. Sylvian Burkhoff stood near the courthouse entrance, flanked by 2 wolves she didn't recognize. He was tall, nearly as tall as Rainer, with sharp, angular features and pale blonde hair slicked back from his forehead. He wore an expensive charcoal suit and a smile that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Well, Sylvian called out, his voice carrying across the courthouse steps. "What do we have here?" Cousin Rainer, out and about so early in the morning. And with company no less. Rainer's entire body went rigid. Xiomara felt the change in him immediately, the way his wolf rose to the surface, aggressive and territorial. She moved slightly closer to his side, not touching but present. Sylvian's eyes locked onto her, assessing. "And who might this be? Don't tell me you've finally found yourself a mate, Rainer. And here I thought you'd resigned yourself to a bachelor's life." "Xiomara," Rainer said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "this is my cousin, Sylvian Burkhoff." "Sylvian, meet my wife." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Sylvian's smile widened, but his eyes went cold as ice. "Wife? How unexpected. And on such short notice, too. One might almost think you were desperate, cousin. One might think you were paying too much attention to other people's business," Rainer shot back. Sylvian descended the steps slowly, deliberately, until he was standing a few feet away from them. Up close, Xiomara could see the predator underneath the civilized veneer. This was a wolf who enjoyed the hunt, who got off on the fear in his prey's eyes. She didn't look away. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vrins," Sylvian said, his tone dripping with false courtesy. "Though I must confess, I've never heard your name before. What pack are you from? The Hendersons? The Kowalskis?" Surely not the Burkhoffs. I'd remember a beauty like you in our bloodline. No pack, Xiomara said evenly. I'm a rogue. The two wolves flanking Sylvian shifted, exchanging glances. In the pack hierarchy, rogues were bottom feeders, wolves without family, without status, without worth. Raynor marrying a rogue was a deliberate insult to tradition. Sylvian's eyebrows rose. A rogue. How progressive of you, Raynor. Marrying down to block my challenge. I'm almost impressed by your pragmatism. Xiomara felt Raynor tense beside her, felt his wolf pushing to break free. Before he could do something stupid, she spoke. You must be the cousin who's been hunting rogues for sport, she said, her voice pleasant. Raynor mentioned you. Said you like to send enforcers after wolves who can't fight back. Makes you feel powerful, I imagine. Sylvian's smile didn't waver, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. I have no idea what you're talking about, Mrs. Vrins. Though if I were hunting rogues, I'd make sure to catch them. Leaving loose ends is so sloppy. Good thing you're not hunting them then. They stared at each other, two predators sizing each other up. Xiomara could feel the weight of Sylvian's wolf, could sense the violence coiled beneath his polished exterior. He wanted to hurt her, wanted to put her in her place. She smiled. It was lovely meeting you, Sylvian. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. Oh, I'm counting on it. Sylvian's eyes flicked to Raynor. Tomorrow night at the Blood Moon Gala. I look forward to meeting your wife properly. Under more formal circumstances. Raynor's hand moved to Xiomara's waist, not possessive, but protective. A clear signal, she's under my protection now. To Xiomara's surprise, she didn't flinch away from the touch. Instead, she leaned into it slightly, presenting a united front. Sylvian noticed. His smile sharpened. How sweet. Young love. Well, don't let me keep you. I'm sure you have so much to celebrate. He turned and walked back up the courthouse steps, his two wolves falling into step behind him. But before he disappeared inside, he looked back one more time. See you tomorrow, cousin. Both of you. It sounded like a threat. The moment Sylvian was out of sight, Raynor's hand dropped from Xiomara's waist. They stood in silence for a beat, both processing what had just happened. That went well, Mikey muttered from behind them. He knows, Xiomara said. About the marriage, about me being a rogue. He already knows everything. Of course he does, Raynor said grimly. Sylvian has eyes everywhere. He probably knew we were here before we even walked in. So what now? Now we go to your house, and I move in like we agreed. Raynor met her eyes. Because tomorrow night, we're going to walk into that gala together, and we're going to make Sylvian believe that this marriage is real. That you're not just some rogue I picked up to block his challenge, but someone I'd actually fight for. And how do we do that? I don't know, Raynor admitted. But we have 24 hours to figure it out. They drove back to Xiomara's house in silence. The sun was fully up now, painting the suburban street in soft morning light. It looked so peaceful, so normal. Xiomara wondered how long that would last. When they pulled into the driveway, there was a moving truck already parked there. You have got to be kidding me, Xiomara said. Raynor had the grace to look slightly sheepish. I may have arranged for some of my things to be brought over while we were at the courthouse. Some of your things. Just the essentials. The essentials turned out to be 6 designer suitcases, a garment bag, and 3 boxes labeled office supplies. Xiomara stood in her driveway, arms crossed, watching as 2 men in moving uniforms carried everything into her small cottage. Her home, her sanctuary, was being invaded by an alpha's belongings. She felt her wolf rise in protest, territorial and irritated. Raynor supervised the movers, directing them to put things in the living room for now. When the last box was inside and the truck had pulled away, he turned to Xiomara with an expression that might have been apologetic. I'll organize everything later, he said. I know this is an adjustment. An adjustment, Xiomara repeated. You brought enough luggage for a 3-month European vacation. I wasn't sure what I'd need. To live in a suburban cottage with 1 bathroom? I've never lived in a suburban cottage with one bathroom before. Xiomara closed her eyes and counted to 10. When she opened them again, Rainer was still standing there, surrounded by his expensive luggage, looking completely out of place in her modest home. All right, she said. Ground rules. First, you're sleeping on the couch. The bedroom is mine. Second, you clean up after yourself. I'm not your maid or your servant. Third, if you track mud on my floors, I will stab you. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. She walked past him into the house. Now, let's see what kind of disaster you've created in my living room. The disaster was substantial. The designer suitcases took up most of the available floor space, leaving barely enough room to walk. Xiomara navigated around them to the kitchen, which thankfully was still intact. She was making coffee when she heard Rainer's phone ring. Vrins, he answered, his voice slipping into business mode. Yes. No, that meeting needs to be pushed to next week. Because I have other priorities right now, Marcus. Handle it. I don't care how you handle it, just handle it. He hung up and immediately another call came through. Xiomara brought 2 mugs of coffee to the living room and found Rainer pacing, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing with his free hand. Tell the board I'll join the call remotely. No, not from the office. I'm working from home this week. That's not your concern, David. Just set up the video conference. He ended the call and looked at Xiomara. Sorry. Pack business. You're going to be taking calls all day, aren't you? Probably. Xiomara handed him a mug. Then take them outside. The backyard has better reception, and you won't be cluttering up my living room. Rainer looked at the coffee, then at her. Something softened in his expression. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't tried my coffee. He took a sip and made a face. It's strong. It's how I like it. If you want it different, make your own. Noted. His phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, sighed, and headed toward the back door. Xiomara watched him go, then turned her attention to the mountain of luggage. She was not moving all of this by herself. Rainer, she called out. He paused mid-conversation. Hold on, he said into the phone, then looked at Xiomara. Yes, your stuff. Move it. Now, before I throw it all on the lawn. I'm on a call with the PAC's financial advisor. I don't care if you're on a call with the president. This is my house, and I will not trip over your designer luggage every time I walk through my own living room. Move it. Now. They stared at each other. Rainer's wolf rose to the surface, clearly not used to being ordered around. Xiomara didn't back down. This was her territory, her home. Alpha or not, he'd agreed to follow her rules. Finally, Rainer spoke into the phone. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. He hung up. Then he walked over to the suitcases and started moving them, one by one, to the corner of the room where they'd be out of the way. Xiomara watched, sipping her coffee, satisfaction warming her chest. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. When the last suitcase was moved, Rainer straightened and met her eyes. There was a hint of amusement in his expression now, underneath the irritation. Anything else, Mrs. Vrins? Yes. Take off your shoes. He looked down at his expensive Italian leather shoes, currently tracking dirt across her hardwood floors. You're serious. Dead serious. And that coat. Hang it by the door. It's a $3,000 coat. Then you should take better care of it. Hang it up. Rainer stared at her for another long moment, and Xiomara could practically see the war happening inside him, alpha pride versus the agreement he'd made. Finally, he shrugged out of the long wool coat and hung it on the hook by the door, then bent to untie his shoes. When he straightened, standing in his socks on her clean floor, something in his expression had shifted. Not quite respect, but the beginning of it. An acknowledgement that she meant what she said. Better, he asked. Much. His phone rang again. He glanced at it, then at her. May I take this call? Xiomara waved him toward the backyard. Go ahead. Just don't trample my herb garden. She spent the next hour organizing her own space, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy while Rainer paced in her backyard, taking call after call. Through the window, she could see him gesturing, his face serious and focused. This was the alpha everyone else saw, commanding, decisive, in control. But when he came back inside an hour later, he looked lost. Problem? Xiomara asked. I'm supposed to review quarterly reports this afternoon. I usually do it at my office downtown, with my entire staff available for questions. And now you're here. And now I'm here. He looked around the small cottage, clearly trying to figure out where he could set up a workspace. Xiomara took pity on him. Dining table. You can work there. Thank you. She watched as he retrieved a laptop from one of the boxes and set up at her small dining table, looking comically oversized in the space meant for one person. His shoulders barely fit between the table and the wall. This is going to be interesting, she muttered. What was that? Nothing. Just, welcome home, I guess. Rainer looked up from his laptop, and for the first time since they'd met, he smiled. A real smile, small and crooked and entirely unexpected. Home, he repeated. Yeah, I guess it is. The afternoon passed in an uneasy truce. Rainer worked at the dining table, his laptop surrounded by papers and his phone constantly buzzing with notifications. Xiomara gave him space, retreating to the backyard dojo to run through her forms. The familiar movements centered her, helped her process the fact that her life had completely changed in the span of 12 hours. She was married. To an alpha. Living in her house. The thought still felt surreal. When she came back inside around 3, she found Rainer exactly where she'd left him, hunched over his laptop with a frown carved into his features. He loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that were more muscular than she'd expected. Not the soft arms of someone who'd spent his whole life behind a desk. How's it going? She asked. He looked up, blinking as if surprised to find her there. Fine. Just reviewing some contracts. Nothing urgent. His stomach growled loudly, betraying him. Xiomara raised an eyebrow. When did you last eat? He thought about it. Yesterday afternoon? You haven't eaten in almost 24 hours? I've been busy. She shook her head and moved into the kitchen. You can't run on empty and expect to function. I'm making lunch. You're eating. You don't have to. I'm not asking. 20 minutes later, she set a plate in front of him, grilled chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. Simple, clean, nutritious. The kind of meal she made for herself after training. Rainer stared at it like he'd never seen real food before. Problem? Xiomara asked, sitting down with her own plate. No, it's just. I usually eat at restaurants or have my chef prepare meals. Well, now you have me. And I'm not a chef, so you get what you get. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and something in his expression shifted. This is good. Don't sound so surprised. I just meant, he caught himself, probably realizing he was about to say something that would get him in trouble. Thank you. For cooking. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Xiomara watched him from across the table, studying this man who was now legally her husband. He ate quickly, efficiently, like someone who'd learned to fuel his body rather than enjoy food. Military precision in every movement. Can I ask you something? She said. Rainer looked up. Of course. Why didn't you ever mate before? You said your father had been pushing you for years. Was there really no one you wanted? He was quiet for a long moment, fork hovering over his plate. There were candidates. Wolves from good bloodlines, women who would have made suitable mates by pack standards. My father introduced me to dozens of them over the years. But none of them saw me. They saw the alpha, the power, the position. They wanted to be the alpha's mate, not my mate. There's a difference. He set down his fork. And I couldn't. I couldn't bind myself to someone for life when I knew they didn't care who I actually was underneath the title. Xiomara understood that more than he probably realized. She'd spent years hiding who she was, what she was, because everyone who learned the truth wanted to use her for something. So you stayed unmated, she said. Even though it made you vulnerable. Even though it made me vulnerable. I thought I was being smart, waiting for the right person. Turns out I was just being stubborn. He met her eyes. And now here I am, married to a rogue I met last night because I ran out of time. Here we are, Xiomara corrected. I'm in this too. Why did you agree? Raynor asked. Really? I know I offered you protection from the hunters, but you could have run again. Disappeared. You're good at it. Why stay and help me? Xiomara considered lying, giving him a simple answer. But something about the way he'd opened up to her made her want to be honest. Because I'm tired of running, she admitted. I've been hiding for 3 years, ever since I left my old pack. Moving from city to city, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. This house, this life, it's the first place that's felt like home since I was a kid. And the thought of having to leave it, to start over again somewhere else. I couldn't do it. Not anymore. What happened 3 years ago? Why did you leave your pack? Xiomara's hand tightened on her fork. That's a story for another time. Raynor nodded, accepting the boundary. Fair enough. We all have our secrets. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and sighed. It's Mitchell Wolf, my senior advisor. He wants to come by and brief me on tomorrow night's gala. Here. Apparently. He says it's urgent. Xiomara stood and collected the plates. Fine. But he follows the same rules you do. Shoes off, no tracking dirt, and if he tries to order me around in my own house, I'm throwing him out. A smile tugged at Raynor's mouth. I'll make sure to warn him. Mitchell Wolf arrived an hour later in a sleek black sedan. Xiomara watched from the living room window as he stepped out, a man in his 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp, calculating eyes. He wore an expensive suit that screamed power broker, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to being the smartest person in any room. She didn't like him immediately. Raynor opened the door before Mitchell could knock. Mitchell. Come in. Mitchell stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the small cottage with barely concealed disdain. Raynor. I have to say, when you told me you'd be working from home this week, I didn't expect this. This is my wife's home, Raynor said, his voice cooling several degrees. And you'll show it the respect it deserves. Mitchell's gaze landed on Xiomara. She stood near the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching him with the same wariness she'd give any potential threat. Mrs. Vrins, I presume. Mitchell's smile was professional, practiced. What a pleasure to finally meet you. Raynor's spoken so much about you. That was a lie. Raynor had known her for less than a day. Has he? Xiomara said pleasantly. Funny, he hasn't mentioned you at all. Mitchell's smile tightened. Well, I'm sure he's had other priorities. Marriage is such an all-consuming experience. Shoes, Xiomara said. Mitchell blinked. Excuse me. Shoes. Off. House rules. For a moment, Mitchell just stared at her, clearly unused to being told what to do by anyone, let alone a rogue. Then he looked at Raynor, waiting for him to override the ridiculous request. Raynor's expression was carefully neutral. House rules, Mitchell. Mitchell's jaw tightened, but he bent and removed his Italian leather shoes, setting them neatly by the door. When he straightened, his smile was back in place, but his eyes were cold. Shall we? He said to Raynor, gesturing toward the dining table. They spent the next hour going over preparations for the Blood Moon Gala. Xiomara stayed in the kitchen, ostensibly cleaning up from lunch, but really listening to every word. All the major pack families will be there, Mitchell was saying. The Hendersons, the Kowalskis, the Burkhoffs, obviously. About 200 wolves total. And security? Raynor asked. Handled. I've arranged for additional guards at every entrance. No one gets in without proper verification. Sylvian will try something. Of course he will. But with your mate present, he can't formally challenge you. All he can do is posture and make threats. He's good at both. Mitchell leaned back in his chair. May I speak frankly, Rainer? When have you ever not? This marriage. I understand the tactical necessity, but it's raised some concerns among the pack elders. Marrying a rogue, especially one with no bloodline connections, no pack history, it's unprecedented. Some are questioning your judgment. Xiomara's hands stilled on the dish she was washing. Let them question, Rainer said, his voice hard. Xiomara is my mate. That's all they need to know. Is she, though? Mitchell's voice dropped lower, but Xiomara's wolf hearing caught every word. Or is this just a convenient arrangement? Because if the pack senses weakness, if they think this is a sham marriage, Sylvian will exploit it. It's not a sham. Then you need to sell it tomorrow night. You need to make every wolf in that room believe that you're genuinely mated to her. That this isn't just a legal loophole, but a real bond. Silence. I can do that, Rainer said quietly. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've known this woman for less than a day. You're living in her house like a guest, not a husband. How exactly are you going to convince 200 wolves that this is real when it clearly isn't? Xiomara had heard enough. She dried her hands on a towel and walked into the dining room. Both men looked up as she approached. Mitchell, she said pleasantly. Can I get you some coffee? Water? Anything before you leave? Mitchell's eyebrows rose. I'm not finished briefing Rainer yet. Yes, you are. Xiomara met his eyes. You came here to express your concerns about our marriage. Fine. Concerns noted. But if you think I'm going to stand in my own kitchen and listen to you question whether my husband and I can convince your pack that we're real, you're mistaken. Mrs. Vrins. Tomorrow night, Rainer and I will walk into that gala together. We'll smile, we'll dance if we have to, and we'll make every single wolf there believe what they need to believe. Not because you told us to, but because it's what we agreed to do. She leaned against the doorframe. Now unless you have something actually useful to contribute, I think we're done here. Mitchell looked at Rainer, clearly expecting him to intervene. Rainer just stood and walked to the door, opening it. Thank you for the briefing, Mitchell. I'll see you tomorrow night. For a long moment, Mitchell didn't move. Then he stood, collected his shoes, and walked to the door. He paused in the threshold, looking back at Rainer. I hope you know what you're doing, he said quietly. So do I. Mitchell left without another word. When the door closed behind him, Xiomara and Rainer stood in silence. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. I'm sorry about that, Rainer said finally. Mitchell means well, but he can be an asshole. I was going to say overprotective, but yes, that too. Xiomara moved to the window, watching Mitchell's car pull away. He doesn't trust me. He doesn't trust anyone. It's part of what makes him good at his job. And what about you? She turned to face him. Do you trust me? Rainer considered the question. I trust that we both have something to lose if this doesn't work. That's enough for now. It'll have to be. Outside, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In less than 24 hours, they'd be at the Blood Moon Gala, facing down Sylvian and the entire pack hierarchy. Xiomara felt her wolf stir anxiously. She'd spent 3 years avoiding pack politics, and now she was about to dive headfirst into the deep end. We should practice, she said suddenly. Rainer looked up from where he'd returned to his laptop. Practice what? Being married. Being convincing. If we're going to sell this tomorrow night, we need to be comfortable with each other. Right now, we look like strangers playing dress-up. What did you have in mind? Xiomara thought about it. Small things. The way you stand next to me. How we talk to each other. Whether you can touch me without both of us flinching. Rainer closed his laptop and stood. All right. Show me. She walked over to him, stopping a few feet away. Right now, this is how we are. Separate. Distant. Like we're afraid to get too close. We barely know each other. But tomorrow night, we need to look like we've been together for months. Like touching each other is natural. She took a breath. So we practice. Starting now. Rainer nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Put your hand on my waist. Like you did at the courthouse when Sylvian was watching. He hesitated for just a moment, then stepped closer and placed his hand on her waist. The touch was careful, almost tentative. No, Xiomara said. That's not how a mate touches. That's how a stranger touches. You need to be confident, comfortable. Like you have every right to touch me because I'm yours. Something flickered in Raynor's eyes. He adjusted his grip, his hand settling more firmly at her waist, thumb resting just above her hip. The touch was still respectful, but there was certainty in it now. Better, Xiomara said, ignoring the way her heart rate had kicked up. Now I'm going to put my hand on your chest. Like I'm steadying myself, leaning into you. She placed her palm against his chest, feeling the solid muscle underneath his shirt, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. They stood like that for a moment, closer than they'd ever been, almost intimate. This is what we need to look like tomorrow, Xiomara said quietly. Comfortable. Connected. Like we belong together. We look like that now, Raynor said, his voice rough. Do we? See for yourself. He turned her slightly so she could see their reflection in the window. Two figures standing close, his hand at her waist, her hand on his chest. In the fading light, they actually did look like a couple, like two people who cared about each other. It was startling how easily the lie became real in the reflection. One more thing, Xiomara said, stepping back. The loss of contact felt wrong, which was ridiculous. We need to be able to dance. There will probably be dancing at the gala. You want to practice dancing? Now, unless you have a better idea. Raynor pulled out his phone and tapped a few buttons. Soft music filled the small living room, something slow and classical. He held out his hand. May I have this dance, Mrs. Vrins? Xiomara took his hand. You may, Mr. Vrins. He pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other holding her hand. They moved slowly around the limited space of her living room, navigating around the couch and the coffee table, finding their rhythm. You're a good dancer, Xiomara said, surprised. My mother insisted I learn when I was young. Said an alpha should be comfortable in any social situation. His thumb traced small circles on her waist. You're not bad yourself. Martial arts training. It's all about balance and movement. They danced in silence for a few moments, the music washing over them. Xiomara became aware of how close they were, how she could feel the heat of his body, smell his scent, pine and something darker, wilder. Wolf. Her own wolf responded, curious and interested in ways that made her uncomfortable. This was supposed to be practice. Just practice. But when Raynor looked down at her, his dark eyes intense and focused entirely on her, it didn't feel like practice. It felt real. Tomorrow night, he said quietly, when we walk into that gala together, I need you to know something. What? I will protect you. No matter what Sylvian does, no matter what happens, I won't let him hurt you. You have my word. Xiomara should have brushed it off as empty promises. She'd learned long ago not to trust anyone's word, especially not an alpha's. But the way he looked at her when he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, it made her want to believe him. And I'll protect you, she heard herself say. That's what mates do, right? Protect each other. Right. The song ended. They stood in the middle of her living room, still holding each other, neither quite ready to let go. Finally, Xiomara stepped back. That was good. We'll be convincing tomorrow. Yeah. Raynor's voice was rough. Convincing. He returned to his laptop, but Xiomara noticed his hands weren't quite steady as he typed. She retreated to the kitchen, her own hands shaking slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. This was just an arrangement. A temporary marriage to solve both their problems. So why did her wolf keep insisting otherwise? Xiomara awoke at 5 a.m. to the sound of someone moving through her house. She was on her feet instantly, hand reaching for the katana she kept beside her bed. Her wolf surged to the surface, ready for a threat. Then she remembered. Raynor was here. Living in her house. The alpha she'd married yesterday. She padded quietly to her bedroom door and opened it a crack. Through the gap, She could see into the living room where Rainer sat on the couch in sweatpants and a t-shirt, laptop balanced on his knees, phone pressed to his ear. I understand the concern, Marcus, but the answer is still no, he was saying, his voice low but firm. We're not expanding into that territory until we've secured our current holdings. Because I said so, that's why. Xiomara checked her phone. 5:07 a.m. He was taking business calls before dawn. She pulled on her training clothes, loose pants and a tank top, and emerged from the bedroom. Rainer looked up, surprise flickering across his face before he held up a finger. 1 minute. I need to go, he said into the phone. We'll discuss this later. Yes. Fine. Goodbye. He hung up and set the phone aside. Sorry. Did I wake you? You're taking calls at 5 in the morning. Pack business doesn't keep normal hours. He rubbed his face tiredly. One of our shipping contracts fell through. The supplier got cold feet about working with us after hearing about recent developments. You mean after hearing you married a rogue? Word travels fast in our world. Xiomara moved to the kitchen and started making coffee. You could have taken the call in the backyard. Or used the bedroom after I woke up. The couch is fine. I didn't want to intrude on your space more than I already am. She glanced back at him. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. The expensive, controlled alpha from yesterday was nowhere in sight. This version looked almost human. How long have you been awake? She asked. Never really slept. Couldn't shut my brain off. Rainer. I'm fine. I function better on less sleep anyway. That was clearly a lie, but Xiomara let it go. She poured 2 cups of coffee and brought one to him. Here. At least caffeinate if you're going to run yourself into the ground. He took the mug gratefully. Thank you. They sat in awkward silence for a moment, the early morning quiet settling around them. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten, birds starting their morning songs. What do you usually do this early? Rainer asked. Train. Meditation and forms in the backyard, then weapons practice in the dojo. The dojo? Behind the house. It's basically a covered platform, but it works. She sipped her coffee. You're welcome to join me if you want. Might help clear your head. Rainer looked at her in surprise. You're inviting me to train with you? I'm inviting you to watch me train and maybe learn something. There's a difference. A small smile tugged at his mouth. Fair enough. I'd like that. 20 minutes later, Xiomara led him through the backyard to the wooden platform she'd built herself. It was simple, just a raised floor with a roof for shade and rain protection, but it was hers. Her sanctuary. Rainer looked around, taking in the setup. The weapons rack holding various wooden practice swords, bakken, jo staff, nunchaku. The small meditation space in the corner. The worn training mats. You built this yourself? He asked. Most of it. Had help with the roof. She selected a bakken from the rack, feeling its familiar weight. I needed a place to practice without drawing attention. Can't exactly swing a katana in the front yard without the neighbors calling the police. Smart. Xiomara moved to the center of the platform and closed her eyes, centering herself. Then she began. The forms flowed from one to another, ancient movements passed down through generations of warriors. Strike, block, pivot, slash. Her body remembered the patterns, had performed them thousands of times until they were as natural as breathing. She was aware of Rainer watching from the edge of the platform, but she didn't let it distract her. If anything, having an audience sharpened her focus. She moved faster, her strikes more precise, demonstrating exactly what she was capable of. When she finally stopped, breathing hard but controlled, Rainer was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. That was, impressive doesn't seem like a strong enough word. It's just practice forms. That wasn't just practice. That was art. He stepped onto the platform. Where did you learn to fight like that? Xiomara set the bakken down carefully. My family. She stopped, unsure how much to reveal. We're what? She met his eyes. Hunters. Of a sort. My bloodline goes back centuries. We were trained to protect our pack from threats, both external and internal. And the sword? That's not a typical wolf weapon. No, but it's effective. Silver bullets can be dodged. Claws can be countered. A blade wielded with skill. She picked up the Bakken again. That's harder to defend against. Raynor was quiet for a moment, processing. Your family sounds formidable. They were. Past tense. What happened to them? Xiomara felt the familiar weight of grief settle over her. That's a conversation for another time. Right now, you look like you need to hit something. She tossed him a Bakken. He caught it reflexively. What am I supposed to do with this? Fight me. Xiomara. You're wound so tight you're about to snap. All that stress from pack politics, from Sylvian's challenge, from living in a strange house with a wife you don't know, it's eating you alive. She raised her own Bakken. So let it out. Fight me. I could hurt you. You could try. Something shifted in Raynor's expression. His wolf rose to the surface, amber bleeding into his eyes. The alpha accepting a challenge. All right, he said. But don't say I didn't warn you. He moved fast, faster than she'd expected, closing the distance between them in 2 strides and bringing the Bakken down in a powerful overhead strike. Xiomara sidestepped, deflecting the blow with her own weapon. The wood cracked together with a sharp report. Good, she said. Again. They fell into a rhythm, strike, block, counter, dodge. Raynor fought like a wolf, all aggressive power and relentless pressure. Xiomara fought like water, flowing around his attacks and finding openings he didn't know existed. Within minutes, Raynor was breathing hard, sweat dampening his shirt. But something in his eyes had changed. The tension was bleeding out of him, replaced by focus and something almost like joy. You're good at this, he said between strikes. I've had practice. How long have you been training? Since I was 5. She ducked under his swing and tapped him lightly on the ribs. Point to me. Raynor grinned, a real, genuine grin that transformed his entire face. Lucky shot. Skill shot. There's a difference. They continued sparring, the early morning sun rising higher, painting the dojo in golden light. Xiomara found herself enjoying this more than she'd expected. Raynor was a good opponent, strong and fast, but also willing to learn. When she corrected his stance, he adjusted immediately. When she showed him a better angle for defense, he incorporated it into his next move. Finally, she called a halt. Both of them were breathing hard, covered in sweat. Enough? She asked. I could keep going. I'm sure you could. But we need to save some energy for tonight. Reality crashed back in. The Blood Moon Gala. Sylvian. The performance they'd have to give to convince the entire pack their marriage was real. Raynor lowered his Bakken. Right. Tonight. Xiomara returned her weapon to the rack. You should shower and eat. We have a lot to prepare. Xiomara. She turned back. Raynor was watching her with that same intense focus he'd had while they were sparring. Thank you. For this. I needed it more than I realized. Everyone needs to hit something occasionally. Even alphas. Especially alphas. They walked back to the house together, the comfortable silence between them a stark contrast to the awkwardness of the day before. Something had shifted during the sparring session, a grudging respect forming between them. When they reached the back door, Raynor paused. I should probably mention, I'm not great at domestic tasks. Cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. I've always had staff to handle it. You're about to learn, Xiomara said. Because I'm not your staff. If you live here, you contribute. That means doing your own laundry, cleaning up after yourself, and yes, occasionally cooking. I can't cook. Then you'll learn that too. She opened the door. After you shower, you're helping me clean the dojo mats. They need to be wiped down every few days to prevent mold. Raynor looked genuinely alarmed. Clean the mats. It's not difficult. Just time-consuming. And it's good meditation. I don't. This is part of the deal, Rainer. You wanted to live in my world, remember? Well, in my world, people take care of their own spaces. She softened slightly at his overwhelmed expression. Don't worry. I'll show you how. An hour later, Rainer was on his hands and knees on the dojo platform, carefully wiping down the training mats with the solution Xiomara had mixed. She worked beside him, demonstrating the proper technique. Small circles, she instructed. Make sure you get into the corners. That's where the dirt accumulates. Rainer followed her instructions, his movements careful and deliberate. For someone who commanded a pack of 200 wolves, he looked remarkably out of his element scrubbing floors. How often do you do this? He asked. Every 3 days. Sometimes more if I've been training hard. And you built this entire dojo yourself? With some help. I hired contractors for the roof and the electrical, but I did most of the construction. She sat back on her heels, surveying their work. It took 3 months, but it was worth it. This is the first place I've ever had that's completely mine. Rainer stopped scrubbing and looked at her. You really love this, don't you? The training, the discipline, all of it. It's who I am. When everything else in my life was chaos, this was constant. The forms don't change. The blade doesn't lie. If you train hard enough, you get better. It's simple. Nothing about you is simple, Xiomara. She felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned back to her work. Keep scrubbing. We're not done yet. They worked in companionable silence for a while. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the platform. Birds sang in the trees surrounding the yard. It was peaceful in a way Xiomara hadn't experienced in years, sharing space with someone else, working side by side without tension or threat. Can I ask you something? Rainer said eventually. Depends on the question. Why did you really agree to help me? I know what you said about being tired of running, but there's more to it than that. There has to be. Xiomara paused, considering how much to reveal. My family, she said finally. The ones I told you about, the hunters. They were destroyed by pack politics. By alphas who saw them as threats instead of protectors. What happened? They were too powerful, too skilled. Other packs started to fear them, to see them as potential enemies. So they formed an alliance and hunted my family down. Her hand tightened on the cleaning rag. I was 16. I survived because I was off-site, training with a master in another city. When I came back, everyone was dead. Xiomara. So when you showed up at my door, desperate and being hunted by your own cousin, I saw myself. Saw my family. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I could stop history from repeating itself. She looked at him. I couldn't save my family. But maybe I can save you. Rainer set down his rag and moved closer to her. I'm sorry. For what happened to your family. For what the packs did to them. You didn't do it. No. But I'm part of the system that allowed it to happen. That still allows it to happen. They sat together on the dojo floor, the cleaning forgotten for the moment. If we survive this, Rainer said quietly, if we get through tonight and defeat Sylvian, I'm going to change things. The way packs treat rogues, the way power is consolidated in the hands of a few bloodlines, it needs to end. That's a big promise. I know. But I mean it. He met her eyes. You're not the only one who's tired of the old ways. Before Xiomara could respond, Rainer's phone buzzed. He pulled it out and his expression darkened. What is it? She asked. Mitchell. He says there's been a development. Sylvian's requested a private meeting before the gala tonight. That's a trap. Probably. But I can't refuse without looking weak. He stood, offering her a hand up. I need to go meet with my advisors, figure out how to handle this. Xiomara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. You're not going alone. Xiomara. I'm your mate, remember? Where you go, I go. Especially if Sylvian's involved. Rainer looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him otherwise. All right. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. Agreed. They finished cleaning the mats quickly, then headed back to the house. Rainer immediately disappeared into the bedroom, her bedroom, which she'd grudgingly let him use to shower and change, while Xiomara laid out her own clothes for the meeting. Not her training gear this time. She needed to look like an alpha's mate, not a rogue living in hiding. She pulled out the one formal outfit she owned, black slacks, a crisp white blouse, and a fitted blazer. Simple, professional, dignified. When she looked at herself in the hallway mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Rainer emerged from the bedroom in a fresh suit, charcoal gray this time, with a dark blue tie. He stopped when he saw her. "You look," he trailed off, "like I belong next to you?" Xiomara supplied. "I was going to say beautiful, but that works too." The compliment caught her off guard. She covered her surprise by adjusting her blazer. "We should go." "Where's this meeting?" "Neutral territory. A restaurant downtown that caters to pack business." "Of course it is." The drive downtown was tense. Mikey drove while Rainer made phone calls in the back seat, coordinating with his advisors. Xiomara watched the city pass by through the window, her wolf uneasy about walking into what was almost certainly a trap. But she'd meant what she said. She wouldn't let Rainer face this alone. The restaurant was called the Sovereign, upscale, expensive, and completely empty except for pack members. Xiomara felt eyes on her the moment they walked in. Wolves from various packs, all assessing the rogue who dared to marry an alpha. Mitchell was waiting at a table near the back, along with two other men Xiomara didn't recognize. They all stood when Rainer and Xiomara approached. "Rainer," Mitchell said. "Mrs. Vrins. Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Where's Sylvian?" Rainer asked. "Not here yet, but his people confirmed he's on his way." Mitchell gestured to the other men. "This is Thomas Henderson and Marcus Kowalski, pack elders who've agreed to serve as witnesses to whatever Sylvian wants to discuss." Xiomara nodded to them both. Thomas was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and kind eyes. Marcus was younger, 40-ish, with a warrior's build and a calculating expression. They all sat down just as the restaurant door opened. Sylvian Burkhoff walked in like he owned the place, flanked by two enforcers. His pale blonde hair caught the light, and his cold blue eyes swept the room before landing on Rainer and Xiomara. "Cousin," he said pleasantly. "And the lovely Mrs. Vrins. How domestic you both look." "Sylvian," Rainer said coolly. "What do you want?" "Can't I simply want to speak with family before the festivities tonight?" Sylvian sat down across from them, his enforcers taking positions behind him. "After all, this is a momentous occasion. The alpha taking a mate. We should celebrate." "Cut the act," Xiomara said. "You requested this meeting for a reason. State it or we're leaving." Sylvian's smile sharpened. "Direct. I like that." "Very well, Mrs. Vrins. I'll be direct too." He leaned forward. "I know your marriage is a sham. I know you're only doing this to block my challenge. And I know that when this year is over, you'll dissolve this farce and go back to your respective lives." "You know nothing," Rainer said. "Don't I? Tell me, cousin, where did you meet this mysterious rogue? How long have you known her? What pack is she from? What's her bloodline? What are her qualifications to be an alpha's mate beyond being convenient?" The table went silent. "My qualifications," Xiomara said slowly, "are none of your business. They're the pack's business. We have a right to know who's standing beside our alpha, especially when she appears out of nowhere with a sword and an attitude." "Careful, Sylvian," Rainer warned. "Or what? You'll challenge me?" "Oh wait, you can't. Because you have a mate now. Because this rogue gave you exactly what you needed to avoid facing me in combat." Sylvian's eyes glittered with malice. "How convenient." Xiomara felt her wolf surge forward, aggressive and territorial. Before she could stop herself, she was on her feet, hands flat on the table, leaning toward Sylvian. "You want to know my qualifications?" she said quietly. "I've taken down 3 of your enforcers in the past 6 months. The ones you sent to my home to intimidate me. The ones who thought a lone rogue would be easy prey." Sylvian's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been surprise. I trained with masters you've never heard of, Xiomara continued. I learned techniques that predate pack politics and alpha hierarchies. And I chose to marry Rainer not because I needed protection, but because I recognized something in him that you'll never understand, honor. She straightened. So yes, I'm a rogue. Yes, I appeared out of nowhere. But I'm also the woman who's going to stand beside your cousin tonight and make you look like the power-hungry fool you are. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Sylvian started laughing. Oh, this is perfect. Rainer, you found yourself a fighter. Congratulations. Are we done here? Rainer asked coldly. Not quite. Sylvian's laughter faded. I have a proposition. Since we can't settle this through challenge, let's settle it another way. What way? A test. Tonight at the gala, let your mate prove herself to the pack. Let her demonstrate that she's worthy of standing beside an alpha. If she passes, I'll withdraw my objections to this marriage. And if she doesn't? Xiomara asked. Sylvian smiled. Then you both admit this is a sham and Rainer faces me in combat despite the mate clause. Because a marriage built on lies shouldn't count under pack law. The trap was sprung. Rainer's hand found Xiomara's waist, pulling her back down into her seat before she could do something they'd both regret. What kind of test? He asked, his voice dangerously calm. Sylvian leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. Nothing unreasonable. A simple demonstration of skill. Let Mrs. Vryn show the pack what she's capable of. After all, if she's as formidable as she claims, she should have no trouble proving it. You want her to fight, Rainer said flatly. I want her to demonstrate that she's more than just a convenient loophole. Surely you can understand the pack's concern? An alpha's mate should be strong enough to stand beside him, not hide behind him. Mitchell leaned forward. This is highly irregular, Sylvian. The mate clause doesn't require any kind of proving grounds. No, but pack tradition does. Or have we forgotten that mates used to earn their position through strength and skill, not just legal contracts? Sylvian's eyes never left Xiomara. Unless, of course, Mrs. Vryn's is afraid. Xiomara felt Rainer's hand tighten on her waist, a warning. But her wolf was already rising to the challenge, aggressive and insulted by the implication that she was weak. I'm not afraid of anything you could throw at me, she said. Xiomara, Rainer started. What exactly did you have in mind? She asked Sylvian, ignoring Rainer's warning tone. Sylvian's smile widened. A simple sparring match. You against one of my enforcers. Nothing lethal, just a demonstration of capability. If you win, I acknowledge your place beside Rainer. If you lose, he shrugged. Then perhaps this marriage deserves closer scrutiny. No, Rainer said firmly. Absolutely not. Why not? Sylvian asked innocently. Afraid your mate can't handle herself? Afraid you'll rig the match to make sure she loses. I'm offended, cousin. I'm offering a fair test in front of witnesses. If anything, I'm giving your mate a chance to prove all those claims she just made about taking down my enforcers. His expression hardened. Or were those lies? The challenge hung in the air between them. Xiomara knew this was a trap. Knew that accepting would play directly into Sylvian's hands. But she also knew that backing down now would make her look weak, would give credence to every doubt the pack had about her worthiness to stand beside an alpha. I'll do it, she said. Xiomara, no. She turned to Rainer, cutting him off. He's going to question our marriage either way. At least this gives me a chance to prove myself on my own terms. Not like this. Not on his terms. Then we make our own terms. She looked back at Sylvian. I agree to your test, but with conditions. I choose the time and place. I choose the weapons. And the match ends at first blood, no permanent damage, no serious injury. Sylvian considered this. Acceptable. When and where? Tonight. Before the gala. Xiomara felt Rainer tense beside her, but she pressed on. We do this publicly, in front of witnesses from all the major packs. That way there's no question about the outcome. And weapons. Shotgun. Wooden practice swords. Skill versus skill, not just brute strength. My enforcer may not be trained in sword work. Then he should have spent more time practicing instead of intimidating rogues. A flicker of annoyance crossed Sylvian's face, quickly masked. Very well. Tonight at sundown, in the courtyard outside the gala venue. My enforcer against you. First blood wins. He stood, his own enforcers moving with him. I look forward to the demonstration, Mrs. Vrins. Do try not to embarrass your husband too badly. After Sylvian left, the table erupted. That was reckless, Mitchell said immediately. You just gave Sylvian exactly what he wanted, a chance to humiliate you in front of the entire pack. Or a chance to prove she belongs, Thomas Henderson said quietly. The older pack elder had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he studied Xiomara with interest. I've heard rumors about a rogue taking down Sylvian's enforcers. If those rumors are true, this could work in your favor. If they're true, Marcus Kowalski emphasized. But if they're not, if this is just bravado, we're all going to look like fools for supporting this marriage. Raynor's jaw was tight with barely controlled anger. He stood abruptly. We're leaving. Xiomara, with me. Now. She followed him out of the restaurant, Mikey trailing behind them. The moment they were in the SUV, Raynor turned to her. What were you thinking? I was thinking that we need the pack to respect me, and backing down from Sylvian's challenge wasn't going to accomplish that. So you agreed to fight one of his enforcers? Without knowing who he'll choose or what tricks he might have planned. I can handle myself. That's not the point. Raynor ran his hands through his hair in frustration. The point is that you put yourself in danger unnecessarily. I'm supposed to protect you, and you just made that impossible. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. How can I trust that when you barely know? He stopped himself, clearly recognizing he was about to say something he'd regret. Xiomara's eyes narrowed. When I barely know what? When I barely know you. When I barely know pack politics. Finish the sentence, Raynor. He exhaled slowly, visibly trying to calm himself. When you barely know what Sylvian is capable of. He doesn't fight fair, Xiomara. He never has. Whatever enforcer he chooses for this match will be trained to exploit every weakness you have. Good thing I don't have any weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses. Not on the dojo floor. They glared at each other, neither willing to back down. In the front seat, Mikey cleared his throat awkwardly. Should I drive somewhere? Or just sit here while you two work this out? Drive home, Xiomara said. The penthouse, Raynor started. My home, Xiomara corrected firmly. Where you currently live, remember? Or have you forgotten our arrangement already? Raynor's expression was thunderous, but he nodded to Mikey. Take us to the cottage. The drive back was silent and tense. When they pulled into the driveway, Xiomara got out without waiting for anyone and headed straight for the backyard dojo. She needed to move, to train, to prepare for what was coming. She was running through sword forms when Raynor appeared at the edge of the platform. I'm sorry, he said. Xiomara didn't stop moving. For what? For questioning you. For treating you like you can't handle yourself when you've clearly been doing exactly that for years. She completed the form and lowered the bakken. But I'm still worried. Not because I don't think you're skilled, I've seen you fight, I know you're capable. But because Sylvian plays dirty, and I don't want you getting hurt because I failed to protect you. Xiomara set down the weapon and walked over to him. I've been alone for 3 years, Raynor. No pack, no family, no one to rely on but myself. I've survived hunters, enforcers, and wolves who wanted me dead. I'm still here. Still standing. Still fighting. I know. So trust that I can handle one more fight. Trust that I wouldn't have accepted Sylvian's challenge if I didn't think I could win. Raynor studied her for a long moment. You really think you can beat whoever he sends? I know I can. How? Because I have something they don't, a reason to fight that goes beyond following orders. I'm fighting for my place, my future, my right to stand beside you as an equal. They're just fighting because Sylvian told them to. She stepped closer. That makes all the difference. Something shifted in Raynor's expression. The anger and fear faded, replaced by something warmer. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm practical. There's a difference. No. You're remarkable. Before Xiomara could respond, she heard it, the soft rustle of movement in the trees surrounding her property. Her wolf senses sharpened immediately. We're not alone, she said quietly. Raynor tensed, his own senses extending outward. How many? 3. Maybe 4. Coming from the east side. Sylvian's people? Probably. He'd want to test us before tonight. Even as she said it, 4 wolves emerged from the tree line. They were in human form, dressed in tactical gear similar to what Mikey wore. Young, muscular, clearly trained for combat. And clearly here for trouble. Raynor Vrins, the lead enforcer, called out. He was tall, with a shaved head and a scar running down his left arm. Sylvian Burkhoff sends his regards. He wanted to make sure your mate was properly prepared for tonight's demonstration. Get off my property, Xiomara said coldly. The enforcer's eyes slid to her, dismissive. We're just here for a friendly visit. Maybe a little sparring practice. Unless you're too scared. I said get off my property. Make us. Xiomara felt her wolf surge forward, aggressive and territorial. These wolves were in her space, threatening her mate, violating the sanctuary she'd built for herself. She reached for the Bakken. Xiomara, Raynor said quietly. I can handle this. No. She gripped the wooden sword firmly. This is my home. My territory. I handle it. She stepped off the dojo platform and walked toward the enforcers with measured steps. Behind her, she heard Raynor move to follow, but she held up a hand. Stay there, she said without looking back. Trust me. The lead enforcer grinned. Just you? Against 4 of us? This should be entertaining. It will be. Just not for you. He laughed and signaled to the others. 2 of them began to circle around her sides while the other stayed with the leader. Pack tactics, surround and overwhelm. Xiomara let them position themselves, tracking each one with her peripheral vision. When they were in place, the leader nodded. They all attacked at once. The first enforcer came from the left, fast and aggressive. Xiomara sidestepped, using his momentum against him, and brought the Bakken down hard on his shoulder. He yelped and stumbled back. The second came from the right. She ducked under his swing and swept his legs out from under him with the Bakken, sending him crashing to the ground. The third and fourth, the leader and his companion, attacked together. This was more challenging. Xiomara moved like water between them, blocking one strike while dodging another, always staying in motion, never letting them pin her down. The Bakken was an extension of her body, moving with precision and devastating effect. She struck the third enforcer in the ribs, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make him think twice about continuing. That left the leader. He was better than the others. She had to give him that. He actually knew how to fight, how to read her movements and anticipate her strikes. They exchanged a flurry of blows, wood cracking against flesh as they tested each other. You're good, he admitted, breathing hard. But you're still just a rogue. And you're still in my yard. She feinted left, drawing his attention, then spun right and brought the Bakken up hard under his chin. Not enough to seriously hurt him, but enough to snap his head back and send him stumbling. Before he could recover, she had the tip of the Bakken pressed against his throat. First blood, she said quietly. I win. Now get your people and leave. The enforcer stared at her, shock and something like respect in his eyes. Then he nodded slowly and stepped back. We're leaving, he said to the others. All 4 of them were nursing bruises and injured pride. Tell Sylvian. Tell him she's the real thing. They disappeared back into the trees, moving much faster than they'd arrived. Xiomara lowered the Bakken and turned to find Raynor standing on the dojo platform, staring at her with an expression of complete awe. You took down 4 enforcers, he said. 4. By yourself. With a wooden sword. I told you I could handle myself. You didn't just handle yourself. You completely dismantled them. He walked toward her, his steps deliberate. Where did you learn? My family, remember? We were trained to be the best. Anything less meant death. Raynor stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You're not just skilled, Xiomara. You're extraordinary. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. I'm just doing what I was trained to do. No. You're doing what you were born to do. His hand came up, almost touching her face before he stopped himself. Sylvian has no idea what he's unleashed. Good. Let's keep it that way. They stood there in the fading afternoon light, the adrenaline from the fight still coursing through Xiomara's veins. Her wolf recognized his wolf, called to it in ways that had nothing to do with their fake marriage and everything to do with genuine attraction. Dangerous. This was getting dangerous. She stepped back, breaking the moment. We should prepare for tonight. I need to shower and change, and you need to coordinate with your people about security at the gala. Right. Yes. Tonight. Raynor seemed to shake himself out of whatever spell he'd been under. About the fight with Sylvian's enforcer. I'll win. Don't worry about it. I'm going to worry anyway. That's what he stopped himself. What? That's what mates do, right? Worry about each other. Xiomara felt something warm unfold in her chest. Yeah, I guess it is. They walked back to the house together, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. In a few hours, they'd be at the Blood Moon Gala, facing down Sylvian and the entire pack hierarchy. But for now, in this moment, Xiomara felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt like she had a partner. Someone who trusted her enough to let her fight her own battles, but who'd stand beside her when she needed backup. Someone who saw her not as a rogue or a convenience, but as an equal. And that scared her more than any enforcer Sylvian could send. Because it meant she was starting to care. Starting to believe that maybe this fake marriage could become something real. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The adrenaline didn't fade after the enforcers left. Xiomara stood in her backyard, Bakken still gripped in her hand, breathing hard as the reality of what had just happened settled over her. For enforcers. She'd taken down 4 of Sylvian's wolves without breaking a sweat. And Raynor had watched the entire thing. She turned to find him still standing on the dojo platform, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You should go inside, she said finally. Clean up. We need to leave for the gala in a few hours. Xiomara. I'm fine. I just need a minute. But when she tried to walk past him toward the house, her legs trembled. The post-fight crash hitting harder than she'd expected. Raynor caught her arm, steadying her. You're not fine, he said quietly. Come on. Sit down before you fall down. He guided her to the dojo platform, helping her sit. Her hands were shaking now, the Bakken clattering as she set it aside. It's just adrenaline, she managed. It'll pass. I know. Raynor sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I've been in enough fights to recognize the crash. They sat in silence as the sun continued its descent, painting the sky in deeper shades of red and purple. Xiomara focused on breathing, on slowing her racing heart, on coming back to herself. That sword, Raynor said eventually. The one you had last night. It's not just a weapon, is it? Xiomara looked at him. What makes you say that? The way you handle it. The reverence. It's personal. She was quiet for a moment, deciding how much to reveal. It belonged to my grandmother. She was the blade master in our family, the one who trained me from the time I could walk. When she died, she left it to me. What was her name? Saskia van der Vinny. The Wolf's Shadow, they called her. She could take down 3 alphas before they even knew she was there. A sad smile touched Xiomara's lips. She used to tell me that the blade was just metal until you gave it purpose. That the real weapon was the warrior's heart. She sounds formidable. She was. Right up until the end. Xiomara's hands clenched into fists on her knees. She died defending our family compound when the allied packs came for us. Took down 20 wolves before they finally brought her down. Raynor was silent for a long moment. How old were you when you lost them? 16. Old enough to understand what was happening, young enough to feel completely helpless. She looked at him. You asked why I agreed to help you. That's the real reason. I know what it's like to watch everything you love burn because of pack politics. I won't stand by and let it happen again if I can stop it. Raynor's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with surprising gentleness. I'm sorry. For what happened to your family. For what you've had to carry alone all these years. Don't apologize for things you didn't do. Someone should acknowledge it. What was done to them to you was wrong. The simple validation, the recognition of her pain, made something crack open in Xiomara's chest. She'd spent 3 years telling herself she was fine, that she'd moved past it, that survival was enough. But hearing someone else say it was wrong, that her grief mattered, it meant more than she wanted to admit. Come on, Raynor said, standing and pulling her up with him. Let's go inside. I think we both need a drink. 20 minutes later, they sat at Xiomara's small kitchen table. She'd showered quickly and changed into comfortable clothes, soft pants, and an oversized sweater. Raynor had done the same, trading his suit for jeans and a simple black t-shirt. He looked younger like this, more approachable. Less like an alpha and more like just a man. Xiomara poured them each a measure of whiskey from the bottle she kept for special occasions or emergencies. This felt like both. To surviving the day, Raynor said, raising his glass. We haven't survived it yet. The gala's still ahead. Then to surviving so far. They drink. The whiskey burned going down, warm and grounding. Can I ask you something? Xiomara said. Of course. Earlier, when those enforcers showed up, you let me fight them. You didn't try to take over or protect me or assert your dominance as alpha. Why? Raynor turned his glass slowly, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Because you asked me to trust you. And because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I'm tired of being the alpha who has to control everything, who can't let anyone else be strong because it might make me look weak. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got me into this mess with Sylvian. What do you mean? My father raised me to believe that an alpha stands alone. That showing vulnerability is weakness, that relying on others is a failure of leadership. So I never let anyone close enough to help, never built the kind of alliances that might have prevented Sylvian from gaining so much power in the first place. He took another drink. Being alpha is the loneliest thing I've ever experienced. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an agenda, and you can never let your guard down because the moment you do, someone will try to take everything you've built. Xiomara heard the exhaustion in his voice, saw it in the slump of his shoulders. Is that why you never mated before? Because you couldn't trust anyone enough to let them in. Partly. But also because. He met her eyes. Because I didn't want to trap someone in this life who didn't genuinely want it. Being an alpha's mate isn't some fairy tale. It's constant scrutiny, constant danger, constant pressure to be perfect. I couldn't ask someone to take that on unless they really understood what they were signing up for. And yet you asked me. I asked you because you were already living with danger and scrutiny. Because you understood the cost better than any pack-born wolf ever could. His smile was rueful. And because you were the first person in years who looked at me and saw just a man, not a title. The honesty in his words struck something deep in Xiomara. She'd spent so long thinking of Raynor as the alpha, the power player, the chess piece in Sylvian's game. She hadn't stopped to consider that he might be just as trapped as she was, just in a different cage. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Becoming alpha? Raynor was silent for a long moment. Yes and no. I regret the isolation, the constant battles, the weight of responsibility for 200 wolves who depend on me to make the right decisions. But I don't regret the opportunity to change things, to make the pack better than it was under my father's rule. What would you change? If you could change anything, everything. The word came out fierce, passionate. The way we treat rogues like they're disposable. The way bloodline matters more than character. The way alphas hoard power instead of sharing it. The whole system is broken, Xiomara. It's designed to create wolves like Sylvian, ambitious, ruthless, willing to destroy anyone who gets in their way. So fix it. I'm trying. But it's hard to change a system when you're fighting just to survive within it. Xiomara poured them each another measure of whiskey. Then survive tonight. Win against Sylvian. And then burn the whole system down and build something better. Raynor looked at her with something like wonder. You really believe I could do that? I believe you want to. That's more than most alphas can say. They drank in companionable silence for a while. Outside, full darkness had fallen. The gala would start in 2 hours. They should be getting ready, preparing for the performance they'd have to give. But Xiomara didn't want to move. Not yet. This moment felt fragile, precious, two people being honest with each other without pretense or performance. Your turn, Raynor said. What would you change? If you could change anything about the way packs work? Xiomara considered the question. I'd make it so wolves like me, like my family, weren't seen as threats just for being strong. I'd create space for wolves who don't fit the traditional mold, who want to live differently, to have different priorities. Not every wolf wants to be part of a pack hierarchy. Some of us just want to be left alone to live our lives. And yet here you are, married to an alpha, about to walk into the most political event of the year. Life is funny that way. Raynor's hand found hers again on the table. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, the touch casual but intimate. Thank you for agreeing to this. For standing beside me when you had every reason to run. Thank you for letting me be myself. For not trying to change me into whatever image you had of what an alpha's mate should be. They sat like that, hands linked, the charged moment stretching between them. Xiomara was acutely aware of how close he was, how his wolf called to hers in ways that had nothing to do with pack politics and everything to do with genuine connection. She should pull away. Should remind herself that this was temporary, that in a year they'd go their separate ways. But she didn't want to. Xiomara, Raynor said softly. I need to tell you something. What? This marriage, this arrangement, it stopped feeling fake somewhere between the courthouse and now. I don't know when exactly, but... He squeezed her hand gently. You're not just a convenient solution anymore. You're becoming real to me. Her breath caught. Raynor, I'm not asking for anything. I know what we agreed to. But I needed you to know that when I stand beside you tonight, when I put my hand on your waist or call you my mate, it won't be performance. Not for me. Xiomara's heart hammered in her chest. This was dangerous territory, the kind that could destroy them both if they weren't careful. But when she looked at him, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, she couldn't bring herself to shut him down. It stopped feeling fake for me too, she admitted quietly. Somewhere between you scrubbing my dojo mats and watching you let me fight my own battles. I don't know what that means for us, but you're right. It's becoming real. The space between them felt charged with possibility. Raynor leaned slightly closer, his eyes dropping to her lips, asking permission without words. Xiomara could have pulled back. Should have pulled back. Instead, she leaned in. Their lips met softly, tentatively, nothing like the brief, formal kiss at the courthouse. This was exploration, connection, two people discovering what it felt like to kiss someone they actually wanted. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Raynor rested his forehead against hers. We should probably get ready for the gala, he murmured. Probably. Neither of them moved. Xiomara. Yeah. Whatever happens tonight, whatever Sylvian throws at us, we face it together. Agreed. Agreed. They sat there for another moment, savoring the peace before the storm. Then Raynor stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, Mrs. Vrins. Let's go show the pack what a real partnership looks like. Xiomara smiled, feeling something warm and hopeful unfurl in her chest despite the danger ahead. Lead the way, Mr. Vrins. The Blood Moon Gala was held at the Sovereign Hall, an old estate on the outskirts of the city that had been used for pack gatherings for generations. As Raynor's SUV pulled up to the circular drive, Xiomara could see wolves arriving in expensive cars, all dressed in formal wear that screamed money and power. She smoothed down her dress, a simple but elegant black gown that Raynor had somehow procured in her size. It hugged her frame without being ostentatious, sophisticated without trying too hard. She'd left her hair down for once, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. "You look beautiful," Raynor said quietly. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his beard trimmed, his hair styled. Every inch the alpha. But when he looked at her, she saw the man underneath, the one who'd sat at her kitchen table and confessed his loneliness, the one who'd kissed her like she mattered. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. "As I'll ever be." They stepped out of the SUV together. Immediately, Xiomara felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward them. Wolves assessing, judging, calculating. She lifted her chin and placed her hand in the crook of Raynor's arm, presenting a united front. Mitchell Wolf appeared at the entrance, flanked by 2 guards. "Raynor. Mrs. Vrins. The pack elders are already inside. They're eager to meet your mate properly." "Then let's not keep them waiting," Raynor said. As they walked through the massive oak doors, Xiomara whispered, "Any last-minute advice? Be yourself. That's all you need to be." The grand ballroom was stunning, high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with portraits of past alphas. Wolves mingled in clusters, champagne glasses in hand, conversations pausing as Raynor and Xiomara entered. Sylvian stood near the center of the room, surrounded by his own faction. His cold blue eyes tracked them as they moved through the crowd. "Ignore him," Raynor murmured. "We need to greet the elders first." Thomas Henderson and Marcus Kowalski stood near the far wall with several other older wolves. As Raynor and Xiomara approached, Thomas smiled warmly. "Raynor. And the famous Mrs. Vrins. I must say, your reputation precedes you." "Does it?" Xiomara asked pleasantly. "Taking down 4 of Sylvian's enforcers this afternoon? Word travels fast." Thomas's eyes twinkled with amusement. "I believe several wolves have already placed bets on tonight's demonstration match. I hope you bet in my favor." "My dear, I bet my entire quarterly dividend on you." Marcus Kowalski was less warm but respectful. "Mrs. Vrins. Raynor speaks highly of your capabilities." "Does he?" Xiomara glanced at Raynor, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have mentioned that you're skilled," he admitted. "Skilled is an understatement. According to the reports, another elder spoke up. An elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair. I'm Lop Dendaz. I've been waiting years for someone to put Sylvian's enforcers in their place. Thank you for the entertainment." Xiomara found herself warming to these elders. They weren't what she'd expected, stuffy, traditional wolves who'd look down on a rogue. Instead, they seemed genuinely interested in her. "May I ask you something, Mrs. Vrins?" Lobk said. "Of course. What do you think of pack hierarchy?" The ballroom seemed to quiet around them. This was a test, Xiomara realized. A way to gauge whether she'd be a traditional mate or something different. She could have played it safe, given the expected answer. Instead, she told the truth. "I think it's outdated. The idea that bloodline determines worth, that rogues are somehow lesser, that strength is measured by dominance rather than skill, it's a system designed to keep power concentrated in the hands of a few families rather than distributing it based on merit." Several wolves nearby gasped. Raynor's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her waist. But Lobk smiled. Finally, someone with the courage to say it out loud. She turned to Raynor. "I like her. Don't let this one go." Before Raynor could respond, a voice cut through the room. "How touching. The Alpha's pet rogue has opinions." Xiomara turned to find a beautiful woman in a crimson dress approaching. She had perfect features, artfully styled blonde hair, and eyes that glittered with malice. "Xiomara," Raynor said quietly, "this is Vera Kowalski, Marcus's niece." "Mrs. Vrins," Vera said, her smile sharp as broken glass. "What a surprise to meet you." I'd heard Raynor had finally taken a mate, but I assumed it would be someone from an actual pack. Not a stray he picked up off the street. The insult was clear. Several wolves turned to watch, eager for drama. Xiomara could have responded with anger, with the aggressive posturing Vera clearly expected. Instead, she smiled, cool, polite, absolutely glacial. Miss Kowalski. What a lovely dress. Vintage, isn't it? I do admire someone who can make last season's fashions work. She tilted her head slightly. Though I suppose when you're trying so hard to be noticed, any color will do. Vera's smile froze. Around them, several wolves made sounds that might have been suppressed laughter. I'm sorry, I don't believe I caught your pack affiliation, Vera said, her voice tight. That's because I don't have one. I'm a rogue, as you so astutely observed. But tell me, Miss Kowalski, what's your excuse for being unmated? Surely with such a prestigious bloodline, someone would have claimed you by now. Unless, of course, personality matters more than pedigree. Direct hit. Vera's face flushed red. How dare you? Ladies, Raynor interjected smoothly, though Xiomara could feel him trying not to laugh. Perhaps we should save the sparring for the actual demonstration match. Vera shot Xiomara a venomous look before stalking away. The moment she was out of earshot, Lobk started laughing. Oh, I like her very much, Raynor. Where have you been hiding this one? She's been hiding herself. I just got lucky. Xiomara felt warmth spread through her chest at the pride in his voice. He wasn't embarrassed by her directness or trying to smooth things over. He was pleased. As the evening progressed, they moved through the room together. Raynor introduced her to various pack members, and Xiomara noticed something changing in how he interacted with her. He wasn't just presenting her as his mate. He was asking her opinion. When Marcus brought up a territorial dispute with a neighboring pack, Raynor turned to Xiomara. What do you think? You have experience navigating between pack territories as a rogue. She blinked, surprised to be consulted. I think territorial disputes are usually about resources, not actual land. Find out what they really need, hunting grounds, water rights, whatever, and negotiate from there. Compromise on the details while holding firm on the core territory. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That's actually quite sensible. Later, when discussing security concerns, Raynor again asked her input. Xiomara, you've evaded pack security for 3 years. What are the vulnerabilities? Perimeter guards focus outward, not inward. They watch for external threats, but assume anyone already inside is authorized. That's the weakness. She gestured around the ballroom. This room, for instance. Beautiful, prestigious, and completely indefensible if someone wanted to cause trouble from within. Several elders exchanged concerned looks. She's right, Thomas said. We've been so focused on preventing outsiders from crashing pack events that we haven't considered internal threats. As the night wore on, Xiomara realized what was happening. Raynor wasn't just showing her off as a trophy mate. He was demonstrating that she was his partner, his equal, someone whose opinion he valued and respected. And the pack was noticing. She saw it in the way wolves who'd initially dismissed her began paying attention when she spoke. In the way the elders started directing questions to her instead of just Raynor. In the way even Sylvian's faction seemed uncertain how to handle a mate who didn't fit any of their expectations. During a lull in the conversations, Raynor pulled her aside onto a balcony overlooking the estate grounds. You're amazing, he said quietly. I'm just being myself. Exactly. Do you know how rare that is in this world? Everyone here is performing, playing roles, saying what they think others want to hear. But you just tell the truth. With devastating politeness, but still the truth. Xiomara laughed. Vera Kowalski probably doesn't think it was that polite. Vera's had that coming for years. Someone needed to take her down a peg. Raynor's hand found the small of her back, warm and steady. I meant what I said earlier. About this becoming real. Raynor, I know we have bigger problems to deal with tonight. But after we get through this, after we deal with Sylvian, I want to talk about us. About what this could be if we let it. Before Xiomara could respond, Mitchell appeared in the doorway. Raynor. Sylvian's requesting the demonstration match begin. Says his enforcer is ready. Raynor's expression hardened. Already? We're barely an hour into the gala. He wants to get it over with. Probably hoping to humiliate Xiomara early and ruin the rest of your evening. Not going to happen, Xiomara said firmly. She turned to Raynor. Let's do this. They followed Mitchell back inside, where the crowd was already gathering in a large cleared space. Sylvian stood at one end, his chosen enforcer beside him. The enforcer was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, built like a tank, with scars crisscrossing his arms that spoke of countless battles. He held a Bakken in one hand, testing its weight. That's Christoph Vandenberg, Raynor murmured. Sylvian's best fighter. He's never lost a match. There's a first time for everything. Xiomara stepped into the cleared space. Someone handed her a Bakken, perfectly balanced, well made. She tested it, feeling its weight distribution, getting a sense of how it would move. Across from her, Christoph grinned. Nothing personal, little rogue. Just business. I understand. Try not to feel too bad when you lose. His grin faded. Sylvian stepped forward, playing to the crowd. The terms are simple. First blood wins. No permanent damage, no killing strikes. This is merely a demonstration of capability, to prove that Mrs. Vrins is worthy of standing beside an alpha. Agreed, Xiomara said clearly. Then begin. Christoph moved immediately, faster than someone his size should be able to move. His Bakken came down in a brutal overhead strike meant to overwhelm through sheer power. Xiomara sidestepped, letting the blow whistle past her. She could fight power with power, try to match his strength. Or she could be smarter. She used his momentum against him, tapping his extended arm with her Bakken as he passed, forcing him off balance. He stumbled, recovered, spun to face her. Quick, he acknowledged. You have no idea. They engaged again. This time Christoph was more cautious, using shorter strikes, keeping his defense tight. He was good, very good. His technique was solid, his defense nearly impenetrable. But Xiomara had been trained by the best. She fell into the rhythm her grandmother had taught her: flow like water, strike like lightning, never be where the enemy expects. She didn't try to overpower Christoph. Instead, she wore him down, testing his defenses, finding the microscopic gaps in his guard. The crowd watched in absolute silence. Christoph's breathing grew heavier. He was strong, but strength required energy. Xiomara's style was about efficiency, about making every movement count. She saw her opening. Christoph overextended on a strike, just slightly, his back leg taking a fraction too much weight. Xiomara swept low, her Bakken catching him behind the knee. He dropped to one knee, and before he could recover, she had the tip of her Bakken pressed against his throat. First blood, she said quietly. Though I could take it if you'd like to continue. Christoph stared up at her, shock and respect warring in his expression. Then he lowered his weapon. The match goes to Mrs. Vrins, he announced. The ballroom erupted. Wolves who'd bet on her cheered. Others looked stunned. The elders were nodding approvingly. And Sylvian looked like he'd swallowed glass. Xiomara helped Christoph to his feet. You're good. Just not quite good enough. Apparently not. He actually smiled. I can see why Raynor chose you. She walked back to where Raynor stood at the edge of the circle. The look on his face, pride, admiration, and something deeper that made her heart race, said more than words ever could. He pulled her into his arms, not caring who saw. You're incredible. I'm just doing what I do best. No, you're being exactly who you are. And it's perfect. Around them, the pack watched their alpha hold his mate, saw the genuine connection between them, and for the first time, Xiomara felt like she might actually belong here. Like this might actually work. The celebration after Xiomara's victory was still in full swing when Mitchell pulled Raynor aside. Xiomara was engaged in conversation with Lobk and several other elders, discussing, of all things, potential reforms to pack governance. She seemed completely at ease, holding her own in political discussions that would have intimidated most wolves. Raynor excused himself and followed Mitchell to a quiet alcove. "What is it?" he asked. Mitchell's expression was grave. "I've uncovered something. About your mate." "What about her?" "Her full name is Xiomara van der Vinny. Does that surname mean anything to you?" Raynor frowned. "Should it?" The Van der Vinny bloodline was wiped out 12 years ago by an alliance of packs, including the Vrins family. Mitchell pulled out a tablet, showing historical records. They were known as slayers. Elite warriors trained specifically to hunt and kill alphas who abused their power. The words hit Raynor like a physical blow. "That's not possible. It's all here." The Van der Vinny family was feared throughout pack society because they could take down any alpha any time if they deemed it necessary. They were judge, jury, and executioner for wolves who stepped out of line. Raynor stared at the screen, his mind racing. The sword. The training. The way Xiomara could fight with deadly precision. It all made horrible sense. "Your father was part of the alliance that destroyed them," Mitchell continued. "He believed they were too dangerous to exist, that no family should have that much power over alphas." "My father killed her family?" "Led the coalition that did, yes." Raynor felt sick. He'd married the last survivor of a bloodline his father had tried to exterminate. A woman trained from birth to kill wolves like him. "There's more," Mitchell said quietly. "I have sources who suggest that Xiomara might have married you specifically for revenge. That she's been planning to kill you all along, waiting for the right moment." "No." Raynor shook his head. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Think about it, Raynor. She appeared out of nowhere, conveniently available when you needed a mate. She insisted on you living in her house, on her territory, where she has all the advantages. She's isolated you from your pack, from your resources. She saved me from Sylvian's challenge. Or she's playing a longer game. Kill you after you've defeated Sylvian, when your guard is down. Become a hero to the pack for eliminating a corrupt alpha, just like her family used to do. Raynor wanted to deny it, wanted to believe it was impossible. But doubt crept in. He thought about how skilled Xiomara was, how easily she'd defeated trained enforcers. How she'd insisted on keeping secrets about her past. How she'd never fully explained why she'd agreed to help him. What if Mitchell was right? What if this had all been an elaborate trap? "What do you suggest I do?" he asked, hating how his voice sounded weak, uncertain. "Confront her. Demand the truth. And if she's truly planning to betray you..." Mitchell's expression hardened. "Then you need to protect yourself and the pack. Even if it means ending the marriage." Raynor looked across the ballroom to where Xiomara stood, laughing at something Lobk had said. She looked beautiful, powerful, completely at ease. She also looked like someone who could kill him in his sleep without breaking a sweat. "I'll talk to her," he said. "Tonight. After we leave." The drive back to the cottage was silent. Xiomara could feel the tension radiating from Raynor, could sense that something had shifted during Mitchell's private conversation. She'd tried to ask about it in the SUV, but he'd just said they'd talk at home. When they finally walked through her front door, Raynor immediately turned to face her. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard before. "All right." Xiomara set down her clutch purse. "What's wrong?" "Your family. The Van der Vinnies. You failed to mention that they were slayers." The bottom dropped out of Xiomara's stomach. "Who told you that?" "Mitchell did his research. He showed me the historical records. Your bloodline specialized in hunting and killing alphas." Raynor's eyes were hard, amber bleeding through. "Were you ever going to tell me?" "I didn't think it was relevant." "Not relevant?" "My father led the coalition that destroyed your family. You've been trained since birth to kill wolves like me. How is that not relevant?" Xiomara's own temper flared. "Because I'm not my family. Yes, I was trained as a slayer. Yes, I know how to kill alphas. But I've never killed anyone who didn't deserve it, and I certainly haven't been planning to kill you. Haven't you? Isn't that what this whole thing has been about? Getting close to me, earning my trust, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Raynor's voice rose. Was any of it real, Xiomara? Or have you been playing me this entire time? The accusation hit harder than any physical blow. You think I've been pretending? You think everything between us has been a lie? I don't know what to think anymore. You've kept this enormous secret from me. What else haven't you told me? I kept it secret because of this exact reaction. Because I knew that the moment anyone found out I was a van der Vinny, they'd assume I was dangerous, that I was planning something. Xiomara's hands clenched into fists. I'm tired of being judged for my bloodline instead of my actions. Your actions? You insisted I live here, in your house, on your territory. You isolated me from my pack. I what? Helped you? Stood beside you? Fought for you. Xiomara's voice broke. I thought we were building something real. I thought you saw me, not just what I could do for you. I did see you. And now I'm seeing the truth, that you're exactly what your bloodline was trained to be. A killer. The word hung in the air between them, sharp and damning. Xiomara felt something shatter inside her chest. After everything they'd shared, every moment of vulnerability, every kiss, he still didn't trust her. Still saw her as a threat instead of a partner. Get out, she said quietly. This is your house. I said get out. Go back to your penthouse, back to your pack, back to whatever life you had before you broke into my home and turned everything upside down. She walked to the door and opened it. The marriage contract says we have to stay married for a year. Fine. We'll stay married on paper. But I'm done trying to prove myself to you. Xiomara, leave. Now. Raynor stood there for a long moment, conflict warring across his face. Then he grabbed his coat and walked out. Xiomara slammed the door behind him and stood in the sudden silence of her empty house. Then, finally, she let herself cry. She'd been stupid to think this could work. Stupid to believe that an alpha could look past bloodlines and politics and see just her. Stupid to let herself care about someone who'd turn on her the moment doubt crept in. She cried for what might have been, for the connection she'd thought they were building, for the future she'd foolishly let herself imagine. And she cried for her family, for the van der Vinnies who'd been wiped out for trying to hold alphas accountable, whose legacy was now nothing but fear and suspicion. When the tears finally stopped, Xiomara wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. She'd survived worse than a broken heart. She'd survived the loss of her entire family, 3 years alone as a rogue, countless attempts on her life. She'd survived this too. Even if it meant spending the next year married to a man who thought she was a monster. Xiomara awoke to her phone ringing at 3 a.m. She grabbed it groggily, seeing Mikey's name on the screen. Why would Raynor's beta be calling her? What? She answered, her voice rough from sleep and crying. Mrs. Vrins. Mikey's voice was urgent, strained. It's Raynor. He went to the second part of the gala alone tonight, the private alpha ceremony. Sylvian convinced him you weren't trustworthy after what happened. Xiomara sat up, suddenly wide awake. What do you mean alone? Mitchell advised him to go without you. Said it would show strength, that he didn't need you to maintain his position. But I just got word from one of our wolves inside, it's a trap. Sylvian's planning something and Raynor walked right into it. Fear, cold and sharp, cut through Xiomara's anger. Where? The Sovereign Hall. The ceremony chamber in the basement. Mrs. Vrins, I'm not supposed to be calling you. Mitchell specifically ordered everyone to stand down, to let this play out. But something feels wrong. Mitchell's been acting strange all night and... Mitchell's the traitor, Xiomara said, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. He's been working with Sylvian this whole time. What? Think about it. He's the one who suggested Raynor marry a random rogue, hoping I'd kill him. When that didn't work, he leaked my identity to create a rift between us. And now he's isolated Raynor from everyone who could help him. She was already moving, throwing on clothes, grabbing her katana. How many wolves does Sylvian have there? At least 20. Maybe more. And Raynor's security? Mitchell sent them away. Said they weren't needed for a private ceremony. Xiomara cursed. I'm coming. Stall them if you can. Mrs. Vryn's Xiomara, be careful. If Mitchell's really betrayed us, he'll have planned for you showing up. Let him plan. I'm coming anyway. She hung up and finished dressing in seconds, dark tactical pants, fitted black shirt, boots. She strapped the katana to her back and grabbed her keys. The drive to Sovereign Hall took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Xiomara's mind raced, running through scenarios, planning her approach. 20 wolves, maybe more. All loyal to Sylvian. All standing between her and Raynor. She should be terrified. Should be calling for backup, for help. But all she felt was cold, focused rage. They'd taken her mate. The man who'd sat at her kitchen table and shared his loneliness. Who'd scrubbed her dojo mats without complaint. Who'd kissed her like she mattered. And now they were going to kill him. Not if she had anything to say about it. She parked a block away and approached Sovereign Hall on foot, using the shadows. The main entrance was guarded, but Xiomara had spent 3 years evading pack security. She knew how to find the weaknesses. A service entrance on the east side. 2 guards, both facing outward. She moved like smoke, using every technique her grandmother had taught her. The guards never saw her coming, one quick strike to pressure points, and they dropped unconscious. She was inside. The basement ceremony chamber was deep underground, accessed through a series of corridors. Xiomara moved silently, her wolf senses extended, tracking scents and sounds. She heard voices echoing from below. Sylvian's voice, smooth and triumphant. Such a shame, cousin. You could have joined me, you know. Together, we could have ruled not just this pack, but the entire region. But you chose a slayer over your own blood. Xiomara's worth 10 of you. Raynor's voice, defiant despite whatever position he was in. She's a weapon designed to kill alphas. Your father understood that. That's why he wiped out her family. But you? You married one. Brought her into your home. Let her get close enough to destroy everything. She's my mate. She's a monster. And when I'm done with you, I'll make sure she joins her family. Can't have slayers running around, can we? Xiomara reached the chamber entrance. Through the doorway, she could see the scene laid out before her. Raynor knelt in the center of the room, silver chains wrapped around his wrists, the only metal that could hold a wolf. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. Around him stood at least 25 wolves, all in fighting stance. Sylvian stood directly in front of Raynor, a silver blade in his hand. And off to the side, watching with cold calculation, stood Mitchell Wolf. Any last words, cousin? Sylvian asked, raising the blade. Yeah, Raynor said. You talk too much. Xiomara stepped into the doorway, katana drawn. He's right. You do talk too much. Every head in the room turned toward her. Sylvian's eyes widened. How did you get past your guards? Your security? Your carefully laid trap. Xiomara walked forward slowly, her katana catching the dim light. I'm Evander Vinny. We were trained to infiltrate alpha strongholds and eliminate targets without ever being detected. Your amateur setup barely slowed me down. Kill her, Sylvian shouted. 5 wolves rushed at her simultaneously. Xiomara moved. Her grandmother's training took over, every lesson, every form, every technique honed over years of practice. The katana sang through the air, precise and devastating. She didn't kill, that wasn't the objective, but she incapacitated. Slashed tendons struck pressure points, used their momentum against them. Bodies hit the floor. More wolves came. Xiomara danced between them, her blade a silver arc in the darkness. She was outnumbered 20-1, but numbers meant nothing against superior skill. She fought her way toward Raynor, leaving a trail of groaning wolves behind her. When she reached him, she sliced through the silver chains with one stroke. Raynor's hands were free. You came, he said, disbelief and hope warring in his eyes. Of course I came. You're my mate. She tossed him a knife she'd taken from one of the guards. Now get up. We're not done yet. Raynor stood, his wolf surging forward as he shifted partially, claws extending, eyes glowing amber. Together, they turned to face the remaining wolves. Sylvian had fallen back, his confidence cracking. Mitchell, do something. Mitchell stepped forward, and Xiomara saw him clearly for the first time. The advisor who'd been so helpful, so concerned. The traitor who'd orchestrated everything. I'm disappointed, Mrs. Vrins, Mitchell said calmly. I'd hoped you would kill Raynor yourself. It would have been poetic, the Slayer eliminating the son of the Alpha who destroyed her family. But you had to go and develop actual feelings for him. You played both sides, Raynor said, his voice rough with betrayal. You've been feeding information to Sylvian this whole time. Someone had to clean up your father's messes. He was too soft in his final years, too willing to compromise. Sylvian promised a return to the old ways, strength, dominance, traditional values. Mitchell's expression hardened. And he promised me power in the new regime. You sold out your alpha for power, Xiomara said. How predictable, says the Slayer who married one. Tell me, Mrs. Vrins, how many nights did you lie awake planning Raynor's death? How many times did you imagine driving that katana through his heart? Never. Xiomara's voice was absolute. Because unlike you, I'm capable of loyalty. Of seeing beyond bloodlines and politics to the person underneath. Raynor isn't his father. And I'm not defined by what my family used to be. Touching, but irrelevant. Mitchell gestured, and the remaining wolves, at least 15, formed a circle around Xiomara and Raynor. You're outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender now, and I'll make your deaths quick. Counter-proposal, Raynor said. You surrender, and I'll only exile you instead of tearing you apart. Sylvian laughed. Bold words from a chained wolf with no pack support. He has me, Xiomara said. That's all the support he needs. She attacked. This time, Raynor fought beside her. They moved together like they'd been training for years, her blade covering his blind spots, his claws protecting her flanks. Where she was precision, he was power. Where he was aggression, she was finesse. They were perfectly matched. The wolves fell back under the combined assault. Xiomara's katana flashed, taking down 3 more. Raynor's claws raked across another's chest, sending him sprawling. But there were too many. For every wolf they dropped, 2 more pressed forward. Xiomara felt a blade slice across her ribs, shallow but painful. Raynor took a hit to his shoulder, silver-tipped and burning. They were being overwhelmed. Then Xiomara saw it, Sylvian, edging toward the exit. The coward was going to run and let his wolves die while he escaped. Raynor, she shouted. Sylvian's running. Go. I've got this. Xiomara broke from the circle and ran after Sylvian. He saw her coming and shifted, his wolf form bursting through his clothes. A massive silver-white beast that launched itself at her with lethal intent. Xiomara met him head-on. They collided in a tangle of fur and steel. Sylvian's claws raked toward her throat, but she rolled under the strike, her katana singing as it traced a line across his flank. He howled and spun, snapping at her with jaws that could crush bone. She danced back, breathing hard. Fighting a shifted wolf in close quarters was dangerous. They were stronger, faster, more resilient. Her only advantage was skill and the blade that could cut through wolf hide like paper. Sylvian circled her, looking for an opening. You should have killed Raynor when you had the chance, Slayer. Your family would be disappointed. My family would be proud. I chose honor over revenge. Something you'd never understand. He lunged. Xiomara sidestepped, her katana flashing in a complex strike pattern her grandmother had taught her. The blade found its mark, Sylvian's front right leg, cutting deep through muscle and tendon. He collapsed, howling in pain and rage. Xiomara stood over him, katana at his throat. Yield. Never. Then you're a fool as well as a traitor. She heard Raynor shout her name in warning. turned just in time to see Mitchell rushing at her with a silver blade raised high. No time to dodge. No time to block. Raynor appeared from nowhere, throwing himself between Xiomara and the blade. The silver knife sank deep into his side, and he cried out in agony. No! Xiomara caught him as he fell. Mitchell raised the blade again, ready to finish them both. Xiomara's world narrowed to pure instinct. Still holding Raynor, she threw her katana with perfect precision. The blade spun end over end and buried itself in Mitchell's shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the floor. In the sudden silence, Xiomara heard sirens. Saw lights flashing outside. Mikey burst into the chamber with what looked like the entire pack security force behind him. Raynor. Xiomara. Here, Xiomara called weakly. We need medical. Now. She looked down at Raynor, still bleeding from the silver wound. His eyes found hers, pain-filled but conscious. You came for me, he whispered. Of course I came. You're my mate. My actual mate. The real thing. She pressed her hand to his wound, trying to slow the bleeding. I love you, you idiot. Even when you don't trust me. Even when you think I'm a monster. I love you. You're not a monster. His hand found hers, bloody and trembling. You're the bravest person I've ever met. And I'm sorry. For doubting you. For believing Mitchell over what I knew in my heart. You can apologize properly when you're not bleeding to death. Deal. Medics rushed in, along with pack healers. They loaded Raynor onto a stretcher, while others secured Sylvian and Mitchell. Xiomara refused to let go of Raynor's hand, walking beside the stretcher as they carried him out. Behind them, in the ruined ceremony chamber, the old order lay in pieces. And somewhere in the chaos, something new was being born. 3 days later, Raynor sat in the pack council chamber, his side still bandaged but healing. Silver wounds took time, even for an alpha. Xiomara sat beside him, exactly where she belonged. The entire pack leadership was assembled, elders, advisors, representatives from all the major families. They'd been in session for hours, debating what came next. Sylvian Burkhoff sat in chains at the far end of the room, his leg still healing from Xiomara's katana strike. Mitchell Wolf sat beside him, equally restrained. The charges are clear, Thomas Henderson said, reading from a formal document. Sylvian Burkhoff, conspiracy to commit murder, treason against the pack, attempted assassination of the Alpha. Mitchell Wolf, treason, conspiracy, betrayal of sworn oath to the Alpha. Both have confessed to their crimes. What is the pack's judgment? Raynor asked formally. Exile, Lok Den Daz said firmly. Both of them. Strip them of pack affiliation, seize their assets, and banish them from our territory permanently. If they return, the penalty is death. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Any objections? Raynor asked. Silence. Then let it be recorded. Sylvian Burkhoff and Mitchell Wolf are hereby exiled from the Vrins pack, effective immediately. They have 24 hours to leave our territory. Guards stepped forward to escort the prisoners out. Sylvian went quietly, his defeat absolute. But Mitchell paused at the doorway, looking back at Raynor. You're making a mistake, he said. Changing too much, too fast. The pack won't accept it. The pack already has, Raynor replied. You just weren't paying attention. When the traitors were gone, Raynor stood. His side ached, but he pushed through the pain. This was too important. There's one more matter to address, he said. Pack law. Specifically, the laws governing mates and marriage. The room grew quiet, attentive. For too long, we've operated under the assumption that an alpha's mate should be submissive, decorative, someone who stands behind the alpha and supports quietly. The mate clause itself is built on this outdated thinking, the idea that a mate makes an alpha stable, settled, less aggressive. He looked at Xiomara, who met his gaze steadily. But my mate has shown me something different. She's shown me that a true partnership isn't about one person submitting to another. It's about two equals choosing to stand together, to fight together, to build something better together. Raynor turned back to the assembly. I'm proposing a change to pack law. The mate clause will remain. An alpha with a bonded mate can still refuse challenges. But we're adding a new provision. The mate has equal authority in pack decisions. Not advisory, not supportive. Equal. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Marcus Kowalski stood. You're saying your mate would have the same power as the alpha? I'm saying that if two people are bonded, if they're truly partners, then they should share the burden of leadership. Xiomara has proven herself, in combat, in strategy, in every way that matters. Why should she have less authority than me simply because of tradition? This is unprecedented, another elder said. So is marrying a rogue, Locke pointed out. And yet here we are, stronger for it. I support the proposal. As do I, Thomas added. We've seen what happens when power is concentrated in one person's hands. Balance is healthier. The debate raged for another hour. Some elders were horrified by the suggestion. Others were intrigued. A few were enthusiastically supportive. Finally, Raynor called for a vote. The new law passed by a narrow margin. When it was done, when the chamber had finally emptied, Xiomara and Raynor sat alone in the council room. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. You saved my life, Xiomara. You fought through 20 wolves to reach me. You took down Sylvian when he thought he'd won. You're not just my mate on paper, you're my partner in every way that matters. Even though I'm a slayer? Even though my family. Your family fought to hold corrupt alphas accountable. They protected wolves who couldn't protect themselves. Yes, they were feared. But maybe they should have been respected instead. Raynor took her hand. I don't care about bloodlines or history. I care about you. The woman who makes terrible coffee and defeats enforcers before breakfast. The woman who challenged me to be better, to see beyond the throne to the person sitting on it. Xiomara felt tears prick her eyes. I love you. I should have said it more clearly before. Not just when you were bleeding out, but every day. I love you, Raynor Vrins. I love you too, Xiomara van der Vinny. Or is it Vrins now? Both. I'm keeping my family name. But I'm adding yours too. Good. He pulled her closer, careful of his injured side. So what now? We've defeated the traitors, reformed the pack laws, and survived attempted assassination. What's next? Xiomara smiled. Now we figure out how to actually live together. You in your penthouse, me in my cottage. We need to find a balance. I've been thinking about that. What if we split our time? 3 days a week at the cottage, 3 days at the penthouse, 1 day wherever we want. You'd really be willing to commute between locations? For you? I'd live in a tent if that's what it took. Let's not go that far. But splitting time sounds good. She rested her head on his shoulder. We can make this work. The real marriage, I mean. Not just the contract. We already are making it work. Everything else is just details. They sat together in the quiet council chamber, two people who'd found each other in the chaos of pack politics and bloodline feuds. Two people who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to. Two people who were building something new. Later that evening, they returned to the cottage together. Raynor's things were still scattered around the living room. He'd moved back in the day after the fight, refusing to leave Xiomara's side while she recovered from her own injuries. She made them dinner, actual good dinner this time, not just fuel. They ate on the back porch, watching the sun set over her small yard. I have an idea, Raynor said. Should I be worried? Probably. I want to expand the dojo. Make it bigger, better equipped. Turn it into a real training facility. Xiomara looked at him in surprise. Why? Because what you do, the way you fight, the techniques your family developed, it shouldn't be lost. We should teach it. Train other wolves in those methods. Create a new generation of warriors who fight with skill and honor, not just brute strength. You want to recreate the Slayers? I want to honor what they were meant to be. Protectors. Champions of justice. Not the monsters history made them out to be. Xiomara felt something warm and healing spread through her chest. My grandmother would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. Me too. They finished dinner as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow, they'd go to the penthouse and start integrating their two worlds. They'd face pack politics and territorial disputes and all the challenges of being co-leaders. But tonight, they were just Xiomara and Rainer. Two people who'd found home in each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I would love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going.